who will be here shortly, and then one other one coming as well. And we're going to, well, actually, we can't really do that because we can't call the roll to order. So we're going to have to wait a minute for 5 minutes. Apologize. Actually, can I have it?
So what did Poxitani Phil say?
He said t-shirts. He said t-shirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know a guy who was driving up last night he
He
goes every year.
said,
Like,
no.
they have bands and fireworks and I'm like, okay, whatever.
Said no more snow.
Exactly. Well, we'll see what happens. I have a new snowblower, so I wish it would snow.
Oh, it's just because you bought one.
Exactly. It's a guy thing. Come on, Lily.
When it snows, we can blame you.
Yeah.
Just drive by Euclid Avenue. You'll see me out there.
Is anybody online though? Is that, I'm logging in, but is there any chance? Like from, I don't mean anyone I met.
I don't see any commission members.
Drew said he's in the building.
Oh,
So
good.
he'll be here soon.
There is a calling user too, but I don't.
Drew bikes to work, doesn't he? He bikes to work, right?
By the way,
He bikes, drives, takes the train.
Can you email me the link? It's just not in the calendar invite.
Sure. Yeah, so this is the WebEx link you're looking for?
Yeah, just for someone.
By the way, Kevin, I didn't get that text, so you might have sent it to a number that, and I'll get it, my number if you need it, if you want it.
Okay. Okay, we'll get started. Did you get the link?
Waiting for it. All right, let's call the meeting to order, but before the director will read the preamble and I'll log in as you do that.
Welcome. Happy is it Groundhog's Day?
I think it is.
It is. In compliance with the notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law in section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Recusals from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the taking of any vote. Use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants online. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through the proper channels have been considered. We've also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. Proper channels for comments are listed below. Communication with the members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by the Wednesday 12 p.m. deadline are collected by city planning staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to any scheduled meeting. Proper channels for public comment include sending an email to cityplanning@clevelandohio.gov, calling or leaving a message at 216-664-2210, sending a letter or dropping off comments at City Hall, 601 Lakeside Avenue. And before we begin, we'll go through the meeting rules and procedures, so anyone who's new can have an understanding of how we'll proceed through each agenda item. So the chair will call each agenda item and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed before questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation has concluded, the chair will ask planning staff to summarize design review committee recommendation and any public comments received. The deadline for public comments is Wednesday prior to any regularly scheduled city planning commission meeting and will be read into the record. Any comments received by the deadline are also distributed to the commission members prior to the meeting through Dropbox. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff if applicable. The commission will then begin deliberations and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, can you call the roll?
Anthony,
Present.
Luker,
Present.
Curry,
Present.
McCray Scott,
Present.
McKnight, Sargent,
Present.
Slight. And Chair, we have a forum.
Thank you. First item is approval of the meeting minutes from January 19th, our previous meeting. I have a copy here. We have them in advance if anyone has a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Luker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Staying.
Sargent.
Abstain.
Okay. I assume that's okay since we have a quorum and abstentions. The meetings are okay. The minutes are okay. First item is an unnumbered ordinance. It's a zoning matter. We actually have two zoning matters, which for everyone online or here is a public hearing. So I'm just going to read the rules for public hearing portion zoning matters. First, for these matters, we hear a presentation from staff. Then we hear from a sponsor or could be the council person or the person whose property is being rezoned. Then we open it up for public comment, those in favor or those opposed. We will ask for both. And if you're going to speak from the public online, just raise your hand. If you're here, I will call on you and ask that you state your name clearly, your organization, and your address if you're a nearby property owner. And then once we finish the public portion, we'll close that, and then we'll have a discussion and questions from the commission and a vote. So that'll be the process. So the first item is an unnumbered ordinance changing the use area and height districts of parcels south of Lorraine Avenue between 50th and 52nd Street. And Xavier, you're here to present this. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Xavier Bay. I'm a park staff at the City Planning Commission. So today we're going to go over map change 2676. As you just heard, the proposal, the purposes for this map change is to allow the proposed development to move forward as approved by Landmarks Commission to promote diversity of housing typologies and to support transit and alternative mobility choices, which is in alignment with our citywide plan. And so the current zoning is local retail and two family. And so there's also an existing pedestrian retail overlay right there on the southern side of Lorraine Avenue. The site is adjacent to a limited retail district to the north there and some two family residential to the south. And you could also see a snippet of the urban community school to the right there, right across the street, 50th Street. So this is just north of 90. If you're familiar with the area, Michael J. Leonard Region Center is a little bit to the west there. And so the proposed zoning is limited retail G4. And so this is really to allow for the proposed density and height of this project. So G allows 3 times lot area for your habitable spaces, and the 4 represents a height limitation of 175 feet. And the 0-foot map setback is really to align with the project and allow more walkability, walker user-friendly space. And so some more of the existing conditions of the site. So right on Lorraine, if you're familiar with Lorraine, there's some vacancy, some vacant retail space. And so that's kind of located right here on the site, south of Lorraine, and some of the adjacent area. Some residential to the south, like I mentioned, right across the street from Urban Communities, Urban Community School. So here's some more site context. You can see what used to be office and apartment space on the top left photo there. Top right photo, you can see it, what used to be a used car lot. And then the bottom two pictures give you a view of the side streets where you can see some of the residential context. And so this is a site-specific rezoning, so this is the site development boundary of the area. So the site plan, so this is a mixed-use development. I actually have some more details here. It's 4 stories, 109 units. There's going to be about 2,000 square feet of retail tent space right there, fronting Lorraine Avenue. I'll jump in. Yeah, it's also providing 44 bike parking, 62 parking spaces. This will come back to you. Sorry, this will come back to you for design review. So right now, these are the elevations just on Lorraine Avenue. And so basically, this.
Sorry to interrupt you. Will it come back to us? It's the landmarks
This
district.
was
We won't
already
see it.
approved by Landmarks Commission.
Yeah, we won't see it.
Oh,
Yeah, we,
I figured that because over 5 units.
but yeah, except when it's in a landmarks district, we don't see those.
We're gonna save it. So yeah, here's some of the elevations. Just on that corner of West 50th and Lorraine. And so, just summarizing, we're proposing limited retail business. This allows for your general retail uses, except for some auto-oriented uses. And as I mentioned, the high density districts are to lend projects to allow the residential space. That concludes my presentation for this.
Thank you. Is there a sponsor testimony here or the council person, anything or?
So Councilman McCormack is supportive of the legislation.
Um,
Aware if the architect is online or not.
Yeah, I didn't see them online.
Okay.
That's
okay.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there's Mr. Curtis.
Okay.
In my place, yeah.
Would you like to say anything in advance of the public comment? State your name and
Hello, everyone. This is Chad Curtis, the owner of My Place Group and the properties. We're excited to redevelop this site. Currently, it's underused, dilapidated buildings, several of them in different shapes and forms. The area on Lorraine needs this improvement. There's a lot of vacancy in the retail up and down this area. And we're excited to put the investment into this part of the neighborhood and continue.
okay, thank you. So now we'll open it up to public comment. So first we'll start with proponents. So anyone who's in favor of the zoning change, please raise your hand, or if you're here, let me know. I don't see anybody here to speak for this. Oh, wait a second. Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to speak who's opposed to the zoning change, or even if you just have a question about this zoning change also? I don't see anyone. So we'll close the public portion and ask commission members for questions or comments.
Madam Chair, I move to approve said zoning change as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I just have a quick question. So did the Landmarks Commission already approve the demolition? Not just the project?
There is no demolition. They'll be integrating it into the existing fabric of the building.
So none of the buildings along the site at all?
Oh, Shannon has her hand up. Yes, I believe that they will be integrating the existing buildings into the new
Okay.
development.
Okay. Shannon, did you want to comment?
I think Director covered it. This project's already been reviewed in its entirety and approved by Landmarks Commission. This is a site plan specific rezoning. And so the site plan and all of the elevations have been approved by that commission. We're just here for the rezoning today.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that there was no demolition. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Luker,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
Sargent. Yes.
Motion carries. The next zoning matter is also an unnumbered ordinance, changing the use area and height districts of parcels of land west of Crawford Road between Wade Park Avenue and Kenmore Avenue, and adding the urban form overlay on the south side of Wade Park. Xavier?
Hello, Xavier Bates, again, city planner with city planning. So the purpose of this rezoning is to correct the split zone issue, and because these parcels will be consolidated, it would be limited to the most restricted zoning, which is two-family. And yeah, so anyways, sorry, this would correct the split zoning issue to enable the proposed multifamily mixed-use project to move forward. It is gonna apply for LIHTC financing, and so this also promotes a diversity of housing typologies, which is in alignment with our citywide plan. And here's the location map, so you can see it's just west of MLK Junior Boulevard, in the Huff neighborhood. So current zoning, so this is, as I mentioned, a mix of a few different zoning districts: general retail, local retail, multifamily, two-family, surrounded by multifamily to the east. Wade Park Avenue that has some retail right there to north and west of this project, and it's also two and three family homes to the west. And so the proposed rezoning, we're going with limited retail business district for this project as well, G2. And so G allows for 3 times the lot area for your habitable spaces, and 2 is the height district representing a maximum of 60 feet. And we decided to go with the urban form overlay because it allows for more walkable, pedestrian-friendly experience. And so the existing conditions, this is currently a MLK Plaza. As you can see, some of the apartment complexes to the east there. And so I actually have some more here. So you also see some of the retail happening adjacent across the street from Wade Park Avenue there. This area has some vacancy, some blight, but there's also been some reinvestment into the neighborhood in the early 2000s. You can see some of the one of the bigger homes there, bottom right. And so this one will come to you for design review. And so right now they're proposing 4-story multifamily building, another 4-story mixed-use residential building, which has 64 units, about 6,700 square feet tenant space. They're also proposing about 24 townhouse units in the phase, an additional phase, and as well as a food hall market. And so that's just it, proposed rezoning to really allow for the reuse of this property as a mixed use. Sorry, as a mixed use development, obtaining LIHTC funding.
Thank you. Is there an applicant for this, or is the councilman, is this Councilman?
This is Councilwoman House Jones.
House
She was
Jones.
supportive of this, and I believe Dr. Gina Merritt is online as well. She represents the development team. Dr. Merritt?
I think I saw her.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And I also have my colleague who's the development manager from my team on site. Sarah Ingerson should be in the room. Yes. So I just wanted to give a few minutes of testimony behind this project. It actually came to my attention as I am developing 9410 Huff, which is an 8-minute walk away. Investing $45 million in that project, bringing that 15-year vacant abandoned property back to life. And my partners who I'm working with also got the property right across the street here on Crawford. You'll see you can't see it in this, I guess this view, but there's a vacant parcel right across the street from this parcel. And that parcel is Yes, those two sort of blocks there, I guess maybe Amwell 93rd, 94th, those two vacant blocks in there. We're supposed to do multifamily housing there as well. And my partner said, well, if we're going to do multifamily here, we should look at the parcel across the street because it had been disinvested, right? And it, it wasn't a property that was bringing any vibrancy to this neighborhood. And then I started looking around and I found that the pastor owned this site. And I met with him and he said he had been trying to sell this site to many people who were like chasing him to buy it. And he just wasn't comfortable with selling it to anyone until he met me, which is, a beautiful thing, obviously, to say. And so we decided to buy it. And so we are the sole owner of the development. And as the first foray into engaging the community in this project, we knew we wanted to bring retail back to this space, but not in such a robust way, but more sort of dense, compact, meaningful way. And so we did a pitch competition last summer. And in 6 weeks, we signed up 52 businesses of color that were interested in being part of this development. And we are partnered now with Tri-C, who started an entrepreneurship center. Our platform we have, which is an economic empowerment platform, is partnered with Tri-C in order to provide support to entrepreneurs who eventually will select 15 to 16 of them to be part of this development. The other piece that's important to us about this, the commercial component, is that our goal is to make it a community-owned project. So we will be working on setting up a structure that will allow people to purchase shares or earn in shares so that each year they get to participate, the community gets to participate in the profits that are thrown off by the commercial component of the project. And then, of course, we've decided to add some multifamily density to be able to support those businesses and create more of a walkable community. And then, as the architects will show you, then we also added a single-family home component. Our intent is to make those for sale, but we're also thinking about a program that allows people to rent to buy, because we know that lots of people want to be homeowners and cannot be. And part of our platform, Project Community Capital, really helps people from zero to home ownership. So we provide all kinds of programming and supports to help people improve their economics by way of owning their own business or getting a better job so that they can eventually have the American dream and own a home. So that's our story, and just wanted to make sure we shared that with you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So we will now open it up to the public, either here or online. So first, anyone who would like to speak in favor of this zoning change or ask a question, you can raise your hand. I don't see anyone. Is there anybody who's opposed to this zoning change? So I don't see anyone. So we'll close the public portion. And commission members, any questions or comments before we take a vote? I'll just say it's a great project. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone? Yes.
Chair, I have a motion to approve the zoning change as presented.
I second.
A motion and a second. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
Sargent. Yes.
Motion carries. We look forward to seeing you back with the design review case. One step in the process, just today. First step in the
Thank you.
process. Yeah, thank you. So now we have the most patient person in City Hall. So, Phil, we're here to see the special presentation on Complete and Green Streets. It takes 3 meetings to come to this. And so this is really for information only, but I think it's also really for input from us, so that as you move through the process, we continue to give you our input along the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
While Phil's getting set up, I'd be happy to give a brief introduction. So this is a part of the Complete and Green Streets Ordinance, which was adopted in 2022. Part of what we'd like to do is provide quarterly updates. And since Phil Kidd joined us with the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects, he's been doing an excellent job actually providing monthly updates by e-news. Hopefully you're all signed up for that newsletter at this point. And he has some fascinating metrics and exciting metrics to update us on in terms of increasing tree canopy and some of the upcoming capital projects that will be much more oriented towards multimodal transportation. So take it away, Phil.
Great introduction, thank you, record. Well, maybe it's appropriate that we bumped it to today. You're not gonna get Punxsutawney until you get Cleveland, Phil, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
much better.
I can't predict snow, I'm sorry. Let me give you just a little bit of background, 30 seconds on myself. So I'm from the Pittsburgh area. I grew up in that area, and I came to Northeast Ohio to go to Youngstown State University. And when I was at Youngstown State, I was really involved in things there, both on campus and in the community. Joined the ROTC program, was an officer in the military for a period of time. But at that time, the former planning director here, Hunter Morrison, and Dr. David Sweet from CSU from Levin College, became the president and the campus planning director for YSU, and partnered with the city to do a larger comprehensive plan for the city of Youngstown. So while I was in the military, I was reading about all this back in Youngstown, became very homesick, came back, got very involved in that process. And when I was in Youngstown, I was there for about a little over 15 years. I was a neighborhood organizer for many of those years, small business owner. I worked with the university. I was a city official as a special projects director for the city for a while. And then I even started a chapter of the City Club with Dan Molthrop for about 5 years there. So it was a really good experience, but there was a lot of Cleveland connections for me, you know, between there. So it was kind of like the transition here was natural because I got to know a lot of people. And I got poached by now council member Jenny Spencer, who was working at the CDC, Detroit Growway at that time, now Northwest Neighborhoods. And so for about the last 5 years, before I started here about 6 months ago, I was a special projects manager for the CDC there. And I worked on a whole host of things, affordable housing. I was the tree canopy person, complete Green Street projects there, managed the special improvement district in Gordon Square. Got a lot of good experience, learned how the systems work here in Cleveland, met a lot of great people. But when this position came up for completing Green Streets, I thought it was a really unique opportunity because I had worked with MOCAP on a couple of key projects, 65th and Lake Avenue, and I think we had some really good outcomes on those. So was fortunate enough to get the offer from Director DeRosa about 6 months ago, and been trying to hit the ground, like really running really hard. But I know that there's a number of commission members here who are new, and so I wanted to just take just a minute to kind of talk about just briefly the evolution of how we got to the point where we have this really great new ordinance for complete Green Streets. Get the slide. So the first iteration of the current ordinance was back in 2011. It was pretty good. You know, we looked at like kind of national best practices. Really the best thing I think that came out of it was this document you see here on the right-hand side, which is kind of like our Bible for completing Green Street. It kind of, what it does is it looks at different typologies, street typologies, the size, the classifications. And then it makes design recommendations to our engineering, to our planning department about, you know, like how we should be thinking about the different elements for each street. So it's pretty good, but it's generally a guide. It's not super prescriptive in the sense that it looks at every single specific street in Cleveland. It just kind of gives general design guidelines based on the size of streets. In addition to that, we added what would be the equivalent. It's called the Envision Rating System. It's like, think about LEED housing certification for buildings. It's like the same thing for streets. So how sustainable is your design going to be? So that's something that we add to every one of our projects, is we try to look at like what rating are we going to get? Just like LEED has silver, platinum, gold. It's the kind of the same thing here. And then through this process, we did some things kind of proactively. So we started using recycled asphalt for a lot of our practice, which is a little bit more sustainable. And then we launched this really popular program called the Tree Damage Sidewalk Repair Program, which means that on any one of our roadway projects, if we're going to remove a tree or something needs to be removed, that we set aside money to be able to, in some cases, replace those trees if it permits, or work with property owners also if there are situations where they're going to be doing work to their sidewalks. And so that is a program that almost always uses all of its funding every single year. We probably don't have enough to come anywhere close to what the actual need is. And probably the most, I would say, the signature project during this era, we'll call it, of the Complete Green Street program was the Fleet Avenue project in Slavic Village. That's kind of like where we put everything together and said, what could this look like from, you know, like a really high standard level. And there was some really good, I think, outcomes from that, but also a lot of good lessons learned. You know, we did a lot of great green infrastructure. We did have some bike facilities on that street, but there were things that I think now that we're realizing, like, for example, maintenance and how we maintain those types of those projects. But also just how we can do some stormwater capture, things like that, a little bit better. But it still remains probably the standard bearer right now in Cleveland for Clayton Green Street work. And then so those are some of the metrics at the bottom. You can read for yourself. I think one of the things we do on every single project, big or small, is we replace all the curb ramps for ADA compliance. But you can see here, third bullet point down, we, over that whole period of time, we planted about a little over 8,000 trees, but it's not coming anywhere near where we need to be. So we need to plant, we want to get the 30% canopy cover rate citywide by 2040. That means we got to plant 28,600 trees every single year. So you look at those metrics in the 10-year period, that's what we were able to do just in the right-of-ways. And the right-of-ways are what present us in some cases with these roadway projects, one of the greatest opportunities to be able to do that planting. So we cannot leave any opportunity like that off the table, especially in areas where we have at least 4 feet to be able to restore the tree line. But over that period of time, you know, we did make some pretty significant progress on both bicycle facilities. We bumped up the 29th and Bike Magazine. Our air quality index increased. That's not, of course, exclusively due to Clayton Green Streets, but it contributed. And even our water advisory increased. It was a little bit better. And so I think what happened was that we learned not only lessons on design, but we learned lessons about engagement. And one of those things was that while we were making recommendations to our engineers or to planning, one of the issues that we were running into was that we were still getting into the situation where planning would do a lot of community engagement, and we would present designs then to the engineers, and the engineers would say, well, that's great, but we don't have the funding to do all these design elements. And there was a frustration, I think, between the community and council people about kind of like the continuity of the process and making sure up front that there were things that we were considering and budgeting for, especially for some of our more high profile pieces. And I can say personally, as someone on the other side of the table who was at a CDC and working through that process, I understand those considerations. And I think that's one of the things that's helpful that I bring to the table in MoCap is, you know, kind of understanding both sides of that table. But anyway, there was discussions that started happening in 2019 about how do we beef up this ordinance? How do we make it stronger? And a few of those things were about design guidance, but specifically in regards to having these conversations with our capital projects team in advance so that we can begin to prepare and budget accordingly for it. And also a matter of transparency. A lot of times the public, even council people, they don't really actually know where a project stands, what's going on, how the decisions are getting made in-house here in City Hall. So what that led to was in 2022, when the new administration came in, Mayor Bibb, Councilman McCormack sponsored legislation to beef up the Clayton Green Street ordinances. And the things that they really focused on were creating a advisory committee, which is the TIAC, we just call it the TAC. But basically that's a committee that consists of some folks from City Hall, but a lot of community members, both residents and folks from like the RPA and ODOT and others. And we review projects every single quarter. We review usually one big signature project. We receive comments from them, but also what we've begun doing is they have a large appetite for knowing what's going on beyond just the singular project. So we're updating them regularly on where we stand on other projects as well. In addition to that, we have a working group among City Hall departments that meets every single month in this very room. And we work through those same projects. They make recommendations. We add also other projects to the table to keep them informed so that it's not just a matter of capturing comments on specific projects. It's about keeping everybody in the know about what's going on. And oftentimes we catch a lot of things or get good comments on other projects just from having those general updates and conversations. And then the last thing that we do is right now is we are by ordinance required to issue a annual report, basically a progress report, which is what you have in front of you. This is one of the first things I worked on when I got here. And what we try to do there is capture comprehensively everything that the Clayton Green Street universe is working on and doing. Sometimes this bleeds into urban forestry and sustainability and other departments, but really it's kind of a good snapshot year to year. It's like where we're at as a city, both the good and the bad, the challenges, the plus, the minus. So that is the latest report. So that comes out every single September. It's posted on the our webpage. But then in addition to that, what we've been working on here, kind of things that I've just proactively taken on. Director mentioned the monthly newsletter. So I produce a monthly newsletter that summarizes all of this stuff happening. It's been pretty well received. It's also an opportunity for our community partners to share information about their projects going on, Metro Parks, ODOT, anybody else out there in the community. And so we're building the subscription based on that. I think it's going pretty well. But we're also working, I'm coordinating quite a bit with urban forestry, with sustainability, with planning on how we're able to leverage funding from these different sources. So I'll give you a good example. We'll go to the next slide, which is some of the, I'll mention this very quickly. These are the existing planning initiatives that are out there that we look through. Every single Complete and Green Street project that we do, we go through this list of projects and we look at what these things are calling out in each one of these. And we make sure that goes into our fact sheets, that the TAC committee gets these, and then we're trying as best we can to work the intent of a lot of the things that we want to see come out of that. But you'll notice some of these are, pretty current or up and coming initiatives too. Of course, the 15-minute city planning initiative informs a lot of this, but I'll point you to the last one. That's our new active transportation planner, Sarah Davis, talking to the TAC about the citywide mobility plan, which is the first plan that we've done in a while for a total comprehensive mobility. And we have to do that under the new ordinance every 5 years. We have to produce a mobility plan every 5 years to make sure we're staying current and on track. And Sarah is one of 5 people that have been hired to add capacity to this. You have me, you have her, you have Dave Bass, who's major transport projects. You have Katie Moore over in MoCap now, she's special projects. We're a team that meets regularly with Callie Mersman and work through these issues, as well as Dan Schinkel, who's public roads director. So it's a great team. And I think it takes a load off the engineers. The engineers are, have felt overwhelmed for such a long period of time, and even other planning staff. And now they have that added capacity, and we bring some additional insight to some of these projects. But these are, I'm going to close with some of the key kind of, we'll say these are by no means a comprehensive list of projects, but some of the ones that are coming up, some of the ones that I'm particularly excited about. As soon as the weather breaks, we're going to put shovels in the ground on Payne Avenue and Carnegie Avenue, Payne from 13th to 30th and Carnegie from East 55th to 79th. One of the things when I came in, when I was looking at this, it had already gone through design and we're approved, but one of my personal initiatives, one of the things I hope to crack here is I want to depave as much of Cleveland as possible. We have way too wide of sidewalks in some of these areas, and this is an example of Payne Avenue here, where you see the right of way, it's pretty beat up. There might have been a former tree in some of these spaces, but that's about a 15-foot sidewalk thereabouts, all up and down that district. We were simply going to resurface that street curb to curb, do some bike facilities, some traffic calming elements, but those curbs right there were not in the current scope. So sitting down with our engineers, we said, look, guys, we've got to increase our green infrastructure metrics. We got to get the canopy cover higher. These are opportunities to do this. We cannot leave these streets from these main corridors, main arterials from 13th to 30th in these conditions. So the engineers were fantastic. We figured it out. We figured out how to move the dollars around. And then I partnered with Jen Kipp at Urban Forestry, and we wrote a grant to the Cleveland Tree Coalition. And we were going to get 75 street trees put in between there in addition to that. So that's going to be 18,000 square feet of additional green infrastructure on that project that gets added with 75 street trees. Then over on Carnegie, same thing. We're moving 18,000 square feet there and partnered with Midtown CDC, and they wrote a grant for 67 street trees. So it was a tag team effort, multiple community partners, multiple departments within City Hall for 2 big projects coming up next year. And that's just one example. That's a green infrastructure example, but we partner with Bike Cleveland and others to enhance these designs in these ways. And we showing, hopefully demonstrating a precedent of what's possible when we kind of collaborate on this. So 2 ones to look for this year, Payne Avenue and Carnegie. Another thing kind of in vein of that is council people have discretionary money called RIT, restricted income tax. It's basically their discretionary capital funds. I want to begin to start working with council people to how we use those funds to remove some of the impervious surfaces on their sidewalks and then pair that with the street tree planting grants as well. So those are some things that we're piloting in Ward 15. Councilman Santana, she's looking at Store Avenue, what we can do on a street like that. So one example there, we were very fortunate. We just learned that we got $2.3 million for Safe Streets funding. That means that we're going to look at best practices for traffic calming and safety. We're going to start with East 99th and East 156 on St. Clair. And then we're going to also use our Vision Zero plan to look at 1 mile crash areas in 8 other areas. There's 5 rounds of funding for that. This is the second round of funding, which means that once we do these pilot areas for round 2 with the 2.3 million, we're gonna apply for those 3, 4, and 5 rounds for even more money to do other areas. So exciting project will begin this year. I think everybody here knows about what's, the Cleveland Midway, both Superior and Lorraine. Superior, these are probably our biggest, highest profile complete and Green Street projects right now that we got going. Superior is going to go to construction next year. We have a lot of good community engagement. Superior will be on the TAC agenda, the Complete and Green Street Committee agenda for this March. So what we're going to do there is take all the community input that we've done so far and then present that to the TAC and say, okay, here's our decision points. This is where we're really having some troubles trying to figure out here and there. And that's how we leverage that knowledge of the TAC to be able to help us from a technical standpoint figure out some of those issues. And then Lorraine, we just are beginning to do the preliminary design process there. That we still have $18 million to raise for that project, so we got a little while. But both of those are high-profile signature projects. And then the last one is one that I'm personally really excited about. This is the Lee Road project. So part of the Mayor Southeast Side Initiative, we are going to go all in on Lee Road from the border of Shaker Heights all the way down to Miles Road. And when I say all in, I'm talking about a $20 million plus project. And what's also nice about that is we're coordinating with Shaker Heights is doing a very similar design and award-winning actually from basically Van Aken to the border. So we're coordinating with them and we're bringing the county in too to talk about how they can help us project manage this project. But I really think like that's a road for a lot of reasons that needs a proper design. It deserves it historically and it deserves it from a safety standpoint. It deserves it for all the reasons. But that's a project that we're looking to go to design on in 2025 and construct in 2027. We've already raised about $12 to $15 million for that project right now. So we're really excited about it, but we'll be coming back to you obviously for a lot of these. And I'll probably be presenting on a number of them. But Lee is one in particular that really stands out. So I just kind of wanted to do a shout out on that one because I think that it's really going to be kind of a signature piece for the Southeast Side work. And we had some really great community engagement meetings. We just did a master plan down for Lee Harbor neighborhood, and the residents are, I think, particularly excited about the project. So I think that's all I got. This was just an update. I'm happy to come back as often as you like. I'm sure I'll be in front of you to present different projects and whatnot, but I just want to thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Yeah. I do. First of all, great. What's fantastic is we're actually starting to talk to one another. Wow, imagine that. You sit next to the guy who's in a different department, but you don't talk. But this is all great news. I'm going to take off my planning hat and put on my resident hat. I live at Beacon Place, established about 30 years ago. And the tree lawns are pretty narrow on a couple of the streets. They planted trees and probably 50%, probably 6% of the canopy's gone because they couldn't thrive in that restricted width. So how are you addressing that? Because naturally you can, not that it's going to make a big difference, but it'll make a substantial difference if you came back and replanted those trees. And in connection with that, it would be interesting to see how we actually teach people how to maintain trees when they're initially planted.
That's right.
I mean, we go out and cut our tree lawns. We're responsible for that maintenance. I know I have 6 pear trees and 1 pin oak on my land. And the first couple of years, I was there watering it. I was doing deep root fertilization. I think that's could be an interesting process too. So
I totally agree with you. I'm glad you mentioned this. There's another source of funds that we have never tapped into, which I'm working with Dan Schinkel in planning and Jennifer Kipp, and that is the Green Infrastructure Grant at the Sewer District. Usually those grants are used for permeable pavers for parking lots. Well, guess what? We can use that grant. We're working on the design so that we can redo it, for example, like tree pits. Those are right now we call tree coffins. And in areas like that, where, we need to be a little bit more surgical, where there might be too much impervious surface, maybe we can't restore the whole tree lawn, but we can use that footprint and maybe come out an extra foot. There's 3 or 4 different designs that you can do for better soil volume treatment. You can recess it down into the ground by 2 feet and do a curb cut, so it captures the stormwater, and put a 6-inch fence around here. There's something called a soil cell, which allows for basically a wider underneath the street thing where you can still keep a smaller section. So anyway, there's $300,000 that we're not tapping into every single year. And we're going to tap into that funding. And we're going to do it through collaboration with different departments and our community partners. And to your point about training, I'm a certified tree steward through the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. Free program every year. Usually they graduate between 50 to 60 residents, and it's all about tree maintenance and how to plant. And then those become like the army of people that go out and help educate other residents. So it's kind of a program that's maybe like 3 or 4 years in existence, but it's growing in popularity. And it's a program that I would like totally reference to anybody who wants to learn more about tree care, but also have those people come out to block clubs and, you know, whenever you're gonna do a tree planting project, they will give free instruction. I'm one of them. I'm now a planting leader. They have now like,
In Green Street Theater.
Love it.
He's eating up. Yeah.
Working at the city years ago.
Plant a pit in my officially.
yes, right.
I have a technical question.
Sure.
So like, and it's, out of transparency, it's because I'm thinking about East 66th Street.
Yes.
Is every project a complete in Green Street? Like, so and like, or go with me for a second.
Sure.
So what makes this list versus another list? Like,
It's,
I don't
Actually, add
Yeah,
to that, 'cause that was
sure.
kind of my question, like how, like, when I think of the vastness, right, it's like, how do you hone in? So very much
Yeah.
building on the chairs.
I'll use comparative examples of some projects we have here. So like, I think Carnegie and Payne would technically not be considered a complete and Green Street project. Those are projects in which they were largely going to be resurfacing, and then we looked to enhance that. So they kind of became, through figuring out how we could do the enhancements, we'll call it complete and Green Street light of sorts. There were other projects like Lee Road, or East 66th Street, which, sorry, I wrote that as a note here. We had some good news we just learned last week that we got funding from NOACA to do the $2.4 million streetscape improvements for East 66. But those are ones where we know that we are going to raise some additional money to do what the entire right of way. So beyond just the curb, just the asphalt, both the sidewalk we have money to do and in between the curbs. Some of this stuff, I don't want to get too in the weeds about it, but a lot of times it's dependent on what are the roads qualified for funding. And then what they aren't qualified for, where can we find those dollars to do the streetscape work, to do these other things? Sometimes there's money out there if we're going to do water line work. If we're going to rip up the sidewalks, do water line, that leverages a bunch of other funding that we can get from the state, from other sources to do a more complete replacement of that with complete Green Street elements. But there's other examples of that where even if we're not doing that, we can find funding potentially to at least eliminate or remove 4 feet of concrete so that we can at least restore the tree lawn and then find the money to be able to do the tree canopy restoration. So again, that would be more like a light version of the green of the complete Green Street project. So there's projects that I like to present all of them to the TAC as much as I can to keep them informed, because they are aware of things that we can do like that, enhancements. If it's not necessarily being viewed right now as a, you know, like a transformational Fleet Avenue style or Lee Road style complete Green Street project, what are the other things we can do using our partners, using our knowledge to enhance those projects and make them as close as we can to a complete Green Street project?
I think we should give an award to the best, most energy and the most,
Yeah.
what I say, progress I've seen in a really long time. So it's amazing.
And-
6 months, it's hard to believe.
It's like, you
Definitely
haven't been here that long. I love it. I really do. It's
And
like.
Great presentation. I like the enthusiasm. Everyone should tell a story like you.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously, that's
And
what.
we should multiply you. We need to figure out if you can
So,
multiply.
personal thing, not related to. If you like this, I'm doing a side project where I'm running every single street in Cleveland and I document it. And so if you go to everystreetcleveland.com, every single street, I talk about the history of all the different.
Awesome.
So if you like all this, like.
One of my favorite Twitter followers.
Comment. I would like to position, I guess, potentially the city's kind of, just to not do share rows as much as possible.
Yes.
I think, like, generally speaking, as a person that bikes, it feels like it's something that's compromising for both the biker or pedestrian as well as the car. It seems like no one really knows what to do in a share row. No one knows when to pass. If we can really prioritize potentially just safer bike infrastructure, and I know sometimes it's kind of tough moving the curbs out, and sometimes we have those flashers like the ones on Detroit, but I've seen some examples of people using like the curb stops that you use for cars
Yes.
potentially as barriers. So I'm wondering if there's any kind of like intermediate interventions that the city can use to promote kind of safer bike infrastructure. And one thing that I think is interesting that I think the city could have some metrics on is potentially on these larger complete green streets projects is following the economic impact. I know I tweeted about this recently. Almost all the metrics and studies show that, you know, when you increase bicycle infrastructure and maybe lose some parking,
Yeah.
the businesses do much better. They get much more customers. So I think as part of these projects to kind of follow up that narrative and kind of, you know, beat to death some of the things that people talk about in Cleveland about lack of parking. If we really want to support economic growth and those businesses, we should do these type of investments. And I think lastly, the comment about coordination with the sewer district, I would love to even beef that up. I mean, some of the things that they do again with green infrastructure, if there is like a way to kind of set a precedent for, you know, tree pits that have that kind of capability to capture water, and we can again collaborate with CTC on that, I think we should just beef that up even more.
Absolutely. Just very briefly to your first comment, we've got about 1.5 million that, to Callie Mercerman, senior strategist credit, was able to raise for quick build projects. In the mobility plan we're going to complete this year, we're going to identify a 3-year plan with immediate quick wins to do protective elements on the bike lanes. Your second point about parking, in my newsletter, I have a section now, it's like recommended reads, but they're really like trying to address maybe like those things. This newsletter, I have all about how parking is an issue, you know, and how if we accommodate that, how it actually works against us from an economic development standpoint, see all the reasons. So that's one way in which I'm trying to get at that, you know, is to educate people who are reading that newsletter. And then the third point, no comment, I 100% agree, and let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Where can I sign up for this newsletter?
You're at it. Check your inbox. I just added you guys to it.
That's what I was thinking, dude.
Got it yesterday.
Honest.
Go.
Man,
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I need you as a partner in some of the projects we're working on.
He has to follow this up.
Better not take.
Exactly, that's.
Always be careful, somebody try to push you.
Uh-oh. Don't go back to Youngstown.
All right, thank you very
No
much.
problem. Thanks for the time.
Thank
everybody.
you.
Yeah.
And we'll probably see you on a project by project basis.
Yes,
right?
definitely. And again, if you want me to come back for just general updates, happy to do that anytime.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
So,
Thanks for the patience.
Oh, of course, no problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now to whoever's next, you have the problem.
Step.
Design review, Central Southeast Design Review District. This is a CDE 2024-003, proposed demolition of a 2-story commercial building, seeking final approval. This is at 8637 Buckeye Road. City of Cleveland is presenting Elizabeth Mackey. I don't need to swear you in. Oh,
Well,
no.
actually, I should say Director Martin O'Toole from Building and Housing is here, along with Chief Assistant Director of Law, Dave Roberts, who is the oversees code enforcement in the City of Cleveland's Law Department, as well as Alex Abramowitz, who is the Borough Manager of Demolition, and
I'm Mackey.
Oh. hello.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
would actually like to see if Director Martin O'Toole could open with some comments,
Of
as
course,
well as answer
Good
some
morning.
questions
Good
before
morning.
we walk through the presentation.
of course. Do we need to be sworn in or are we good?
No, you're always sworn in.
Oh,
So-
really?
No,
You can't
we
escape.
don't- Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
swear
but I'm
in
sworn.
city public employees.
Mr. Kidd was a hard act to follow.
I know.
Very animated. It was awesome. It was a great way to start the day. So it's good to see you all. So we understood from the last meeting that there were some follow-up questions regarding this demolition in the corridor at 8637 Buckeye, which is in the Opportunity Corridor area. So there's absolutely nothing inherently unique about this nuisance demolition other than who might own it. Right, so this has been going on since 2008. So the new owner took possession in 2008. In 2019, there was a fire and the city boarded the building up. Since then, we have condemned it. So in 2021, in January, the property was condemned. The fire damage never being repaired, the roof caving in, the condition had become very poor. And so in July of 2023, law approved the property for demolition. So it moved its slow way through the channels as it does. And so we have done our asbestos and our phase 1 of the property, which cost $6,200. There was no RACM, regulated asbestos material, found in the property. And so at this point, you know, in November, we were soliciting bids for the demolition of this. We obtained 5 bids for the property. We chose the lowest. And then we needed to come before this body to receive approval because it's in a design review district. So it came to my attention, sadly, I'm not privy to, you know, details on every single condemned property in Cleveland. There's thousands of them, unfortunately. This one did come across my desk when Beth was going to come here to present to the group. And she said, well, this is owned by Purnell Jones. I said, okay. So I did pick up the phone and call him to advise him that this was coming before a public meeting, just to let him know that as a heads up. And that was the extent of the whole conversation. So he is not receiving special treatment than anyone else. We are proceeding with a nuisance demolition. And then just to give you some understanding of how we collect on those, it's a multifaceted process. So when the city does a nuisance abatement action, it's a police power. We're doing a taking. We're taking down the property because it's a public nuisance. Our city will bill that property owner for the cost of the demolition. That's just what we do. If that property owner fails to pay that bill, then we will assess the property tax duplicate. So it will go on the property tax bill. And in addition to that, we also use a collection agency, Douglas and Associates. And Douglas will file a collection action against the individual. So in addition to the cost of the demolition and all of the preparation for the demolition, we have established a fee schedule of tacking on some additional charges that the city uses for administrative fees. And so that is also going to be added to this. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I know Dave can expound from law's position on this. I mean, he was served. We served him in the normal way. We posted the property with notice. We got certified mail cards returned.
So yeah, just to amplify that, this is our process. We have different choices about how to compel compliance with the code. You can bring people to court if you believe that will work. Ask for them to be ordered by the court to make repairs. But we have so many properties that really just need to be demolished. It's better in most cases to abate the nuisance ourselves and then recover the money. And recovering the money itself has a process. Everyone's treated the same. You get a bill, you would pay it directly. If you can't pay it directly, you could ask for more time. Obviously, we want people to pay, so we within reason put them on a payment schedule. You don't pay, then we refer it to Douglas and Associates. At that point, you're going to incur attorney's fees because our fee to Mr. Douglas is collected from the owner. So that's not a contingent fee. That doesn't cost us anything. And so at that point, that's kind of when he first files it, that's kind of your last chance to get out from under his fees. If he brings it to court, he's going to get your fees. Now, many of them, sadly, proceed to judgment. Then you get a judgment against the owner, but they may be judgment proof. If they formed an LLC and they don't have any assets other than the one they let go wrong, you won't collect. And you won't collect on the tax duplicate if it's not valuable property. Then it'll be sold, but it won't recover for us the amount that went on the taxes.
So the decision before you, which, you know, Alex will run through the slides one more time to look at the demo is, you know, is this building structurally deserving of a demolition? And in this case, it would be the city of Cleveland demolishing the structure and proceeding through our regular process with regard to this particular property. And I believe, you know, Director Martin O'Toole has demonstrated there's been no special treatment besides a heads up that it's a public meeting. So I think with that, you know, if the commission is good, we should proceed through the photos and then have a discussion, questions at that point.
Ms.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair to Director Wong, I thought we went through the photos and Ms. Mackey, I believe, to the chair, I demonstrated that. So,
Okay.
so I don't know if that's necessary. I mean, I'm speaking for myself.
There were some that were not here
Okay.
last time, and so I'm mindful of those who are not
All right.
here. Would
That's
appreciate
good.
it.
That's great.
Yeah, I think we could do one more.
Before we go see them, are there any process questions, since this was really
Yeah.
the process piece?
I just have to make a statement and not trying to sound crass or sarcastic, but wow, this is an excellent way to development model, right? I buy a piece of property knowing that opportunity corridor is gonna come, obviously. And I allow this property to go in disrepair and someone takes care of my mess. Obviously, I'm on the line to pay, but it's a lot easier to sell a piece of property that doesn't have like a blighted structure on it. Then I just don't, more like I have a problem with it. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Madam Chair, to staff, I do have one technical question, Director O'Toole. So when you mentioned, and this is not just for this particular property, but just for my knowledge of understanding, once the property is condemned, at that point, what is like the typical, if there is a typical duration before the decision is made to move it to demolition?
Through the chair. It depends on the logistics. So we had to do a phase one. Sometimes that takes time. We had to identify a funding source. So in the case of this demolition, with our administrative fees added, it's going to be a total of $106,355. So sometimes it's a financial decision too, of what to prioritize and when. Because many of the larger commercial structures are, you know, well into the six figures, sometimes millions of dollars. We don't have infinite funding to do this, even though we do collect on the funding. Right. So, you know, it just also, a lot of times there's a protracted legal approval process. They want to make sure everybody's served, everybody's aware that this action is being taken, because it's a taking of property.
Right. So theoretically, if the building owner, in this case, Mr. Jones, would have responded at that point, the degree of despair of the building and the condition could have been lessened, which meant there would have been less of a cost to the city as far as it relates to the demolition. Theoretically.
Through the chair, it's hard to speculate.
Okay.
Whether that would have changed the cost.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is a general question. Is there a prioritization to across the whole city to those that are most imminent in terms of life safety?
Sure, and I can speak to that a bit.
And is this one of them, life safety?
This is most definitely one of them.
Yes.
So to give you a sense, we in the Demolition Bureau have only been able to act on the condemnation since July of 2023. The property was condemned in January 2021, and over that time, our law and our inspectors were completing our essentially due diligence process to go onto a private property and tear it down and charge them for our doing so. And naturally, there's a lot of hoops we have to jump through to do that. Over that 2.5 year period, we were getting a lot of complaints from inspectors, from folks passing by, given the location, because there's no roof on the building. You can see the thing is collapsed in on itself, and it's right up on the sidewalk. It's a real safety concern, and I know it was at least considered for a possible emergency demolition and didn't quite meet that threshold, I guess. But more broadly, I would say we are always concerned with life safety issues. If a property is in imminent danger of collapse, that gets an emergency demolition order from our chief building official, and we are able to move forward forthwith without any regard toward design review or landmarks designations. But more broadly, I would say we are focused on demolishing properties that are a that doing so poses a real value add to eliminating blight and freeing up future opportunities and eliminating that drag on a given neighborhood. So we're focused on proximity to commercial corridors, community assets, other strategic projects going on in the city. So on any given moment, there's probably more than we can't do everything, for example, in a given year. This is an ongoing effort, and we try to be responsive to highest priority needs.
To the kind of comment about taking the land, does the property then go into city ownership after this?
Through the chair, it depends on whether the debt gets paid.
Okay.
So oftentimes, the demolition process does result in properties coming back into the Cleveland's land bank, which is why we have 20-something thousand land bank parcels.
To the comment about, it almost seems like there is, to August's comment, there is somewhat of a loophole in which the debt cannot be collected and the city potentially does not recoup the demolition costs. I was trying to follow that line of.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is a feature of our capitalist system, right? You can form an LLC, and the only risk that LLC faces is the assets that are put into it. People who own the LLC are protected from paying the debt. So that would be typical. Landlord comes in, buys a double house to rent out in Cleveland, lets it run to ruin. We have to demolish it, and then we go to collect, but it's an LLC. The LLC only owned that one asset, doesn't have any cash, no more rent stream, and so then we can't collect.
But then you can take the property.
Right,
Yes.
the cost is on the taxes.
Yeah, you can
Residents
still,
first.
even if it's an LLC, you can still take the property.
Yes, we can still end up with the property,
Right.
but then we never recover the
Yeah,
money.
you never recover the money.
Speaking as a code enforcement chief, my goal is to get people in court
Right.
before they let them into the room.
Right.
So when I get landlords in with their double and
Yeah.
they say, well, it's not that bad, I say, oh, it is bad. It's
Right.
getting
Okay.
worse. And what we want you to do, since you purchased it and you're getting income from it, is to keep it in repair. And then it won't run to this problem.
Through the chair, this has been the genesis of the Residents First legislative package,
Mhm.
right, to intervene at an earlier point before this happens. I mean, this was the legacy of the foreclosure crisis. It left us having to clean everything up and having to own 20,000 parcels of land that the city never intended or wanted to own. But, it fell to us to clean up the mess after there was no value left in those properties and they just needed to be demolished. So we hope to intervene earlier now, and we have new tools in the toolkit that should help.
So I think are you gonna present it again real quick? Do you wanna go run through the slides?
To the chair and the commission members, would it be helpful to see the?
Just go through them really quickly, just for process, because some folks weren't here last time. Okay.
So this is the exterior of the site. As you can see, the roof has caved in on it. We did do the fencing when the bid was won, again, for a safety consideration. As you can see, people are accessing it with the graffiti and so forth. So next slide. Again, just sort of a summation of the history. When the condemnation notice was issued in 21, we've received 5 complaints, 1 due to the fire. We have boarded it twice. Back taxes are no longer an issue. They have been brought current. We plan to clear, grade, and seed the site. Council President Griffin does approve of the demolition, and as Director mentioned, it is more of a priority project for us because we're with the condition of it in. Next slide. This is your orientation on where it is. You could see the overlay of the opportunity corridor just east of it. Next slide, please. Last summer when we had our environmental studies done, these were current pictures at the time. So, it shows very overgrown with vegetation. You do have some open areas accessing the building throughout the perimeter of the building. Next slide, please. This is some orientation. Again, you do have vacant parcels around. From the south, you do have residential occupied areas. Next slide, please. This is your street walk. Again, the perimeter of the building, very clearly you can see that the roof has collapsed in on itself. There is no roof left. due to the fire. And then we're starting to go into the basement area with the outdated electrical being pulled. Next slides. Get some interior photos. You could see there is some structural integrity issues with it. You have peeling paint, evidence of water infiltration, again, from the lack of a roof being there. Open to the community. Next slides. Again, additional interior photos. Bottom right, you could sort of see where there's some floor collapsing on it, again, due to the age and the water infiltration. Next slides. And then again, these are some updated exterior photos, different view of the lack of the roof, a different viewpoint on the collapsed and missing roof on the structure. Next slide. Closer view of it. Next slide. Again, the overarching site plan, where the structure sits. We plan to remove all foundational items. So your slab, your asphalt, your footers, your basement, all of that will come out. We will level, grade, seed, and straw the site once completed.
Thank you. Just two more technical questions. Just in general, when, what is the general timeline between when this would occur and lien is put on the property, and if someone doesn't pay it, it's taken? How long does that take usually?
Madam Chair, typically what we see is that assessments and licenses will bill it very quickly. After we do the demolition, we give them the information and they send out an invoice. The county only takes assessments once a year. Those go on in September. So regardless of when something's demolished, that assessment is not going to happen until the following September, just the way the county system works.
So in that regard, it could take up to a full year before the process starts.
It's possible.
And then there's a period of then the legal process after that. So it's up to 2 to 3 years if something isn't paid before it ends up back to the city.
Yes, and of course, if it ends up in the hands of our collection attorney, they're going to tack on all of their legal fees and.
I get them.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the follow-on question is, in this, let's say, 3-year period of which something is in limbo, it's a traditional lien, right? If the property is sold in that period, especially for a higher amount, you're just paying off this lien, right? And like it's a traditional payoff to your point.
Yes.
Okay.
Just one other point I would like to make, and I think this speaks to a bigger issue in my opinion. I don't know what the dialogue is about how we create the synergy around filling opportunity corridor with thriving businesses, but I do know we have 3 or 4 main institutions in and around that area who could probably convince their supply chain vendors to make a home there. That's why IBM is there. That's why the repository is there. We need to start thinking more strategically and hopefully avoid things like this. I understand it's a public safety, welfare. I get it. I'm an architect. That's my charge to protect the welfare of the public. But I think we need to really start thinking about how we do that. It's happened in other cities, but we need to really start solving that. I know that's not your charge, but I think just to go on the record, we need to really start putting some rubber to the road here on that. I call it Opportunity Speedway. So anyway.
Through the chair to Mr. Fluker, that so much effort is going into that. We actually have a project manager for Opportunity Corridor in our cluster. Our development cluster is laser focused on it, but of course the blight removal that needs to occur has to happen. So we just completed another very large industrial demolition on that corridor as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Saw that.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
Any other questions or motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the demolition of 8637 Buckeye Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Michael, you want to call the roll?
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Sergeant.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming to clarify. Thank you.
Good day.
All right, next item, Near West Design Review. This is at 2023-011 Memphis Plaza, new construction seeking schematic approval, 4714 Memphis Avenue.
Here or there?
Over there, just so I can see you. So Gary, you're Gary Fisher?
I'm Gary Fisher, yeah.
Do you,
That's funny.
swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Yeah.
My name
Okay. All right. So I have a project that actually gets to encompass some of each of the last two presentations.
Oh.
Some demolition and some.
Some green streets?
So I'm gonna try.
Other-
Make this
No
one
way to
simple.
plates and all that other stuff. So this is a property located at 48th and Memphis Avenue. There was originally there was a house to the east side of the property that was really kind of substandard. It was a rental home in Orphan. There's a gas station to the east. And to the west was a one-story commercial building that fronted on the sidewalk, but became another orphan building that they could not rent because the parking was at the rear of the building and it did not match the rest of the neighborhood. So everybody to the east and west of this is able to pull in, park the gas station to the east, the auto parts store to the west, and as you go down the street, kind of the same thing. So the owners, when they bought the building, about the first year that they owned the building, and this starts pre-COVID, we've been working on this with them all through COVID and through changes in the CDC membership and trying to get through the design process with them. The original one-story building, roof collapsed on that, basement filled with water. They were ordered to demolish the building. I don't know that it was an official order through the demolition board, but the councilman said you need to get that building down. It's dangerous. They had people living in the building. It would get boarded up and unboarded. So the building on the front of the property was torn down. They tore the house down and then looked to develop the property and create something that was more in keeping with how the neighborhood worked. This is what the one-story building looked like, parking all to the back, the house. And then this is lower left-hand corner is the property directly to their west. And the lower right-hand corner shows the gas station to the east and the house that was torn. So they wanted to create a multi-tenant retail space, low scale in order to keep with the scale of the neighborhood. We're kind of transitional. We go to housing right behind it. So the buildings are relatively low in order that way. Roofs were kept to actually diminish the appearance of the roof. So even though you're looking at a flat on elevation, if you were standing at street level, those roofs will more or less fade away. It's a multi-tenant building. It's divided into 6 tenant spaces with the option that a person could take 2 or 3 or 4 tenant spaces. The goal is to attract local retail business, basically mom and pop. Oh, that's an old, very sorry, that's not our current look. This is where we started, by the way. So it started out as that plaza, and over the last 2 years, we've worked with them to create something that's a little more in keeping with the neighborhood. So we went to a red brick. There's a little bit of stone details, some pediments over the entrances, and again, keeping that low scale order. Oops. Go back. Dark bronze framing, lighting on the front of the building will actually be just downlighting in the soffit area. And then if I go back to We go to the streetscape. So currently there are 4 tree coffins that have been filled in on the front. There are no trees at the front. There was no landscaping on the streetscape. And the tree lawn on the 48th Street side was almost non-existent. It's half dirt and not in great shape. So the goal was to restore the tree lawn on 48th, actually plant some trees in it. And then along the front of the parking lot, there's an entire landscaping strip that runs around the corner and across the front, and which will put in 5 trees along there and also some evergreen ground cover along there, some salt-resistant plants. The trees currently were right on the curb, which I think was probably part of the reason that they aren't there anymore. The salt probably affected them, so I'm going to try and move them back closer to the property. In addition, we have some low, and I'm going to call it wrought iron fence, but it's actually aluminum, black iron aluminum fence that'll go along the front of the property too, and some brick piers out at the sidewalk line. And that's really the project.
I see here that it was approved at the local. Is there anything staff wants to add? Schematic approval.
Hello, Commission, Brittany Tabon, City Planner for the City of Cleveland. Yeah, this project came to us several times through local design review, and I wanted to give the kudos to the architect.
Thank you.
Working with the planning committee to rearrange it. We've come back and forth a little bit. In the beginning, it was a little bit difficult, I guess I could say. The design now, I think, is better than what is proposed previously. This is already demoed, so this structure in the past was at the street line. Now it's being pushed back, I think, at a practical level. As a planner, like, I think that should be reversed. That's because there's 2 new curb cuts that's being proposed here too into the main street. That's something maybe to talk about, but on a design level, I think they've worked their way up to being planning commission considered.
Mm.
Thank you.
And the local design review didn't have any comment?
So the last comments that were said, this will need to come back one more time. All of these descriptive about landscape and like fencing, all that other material needs to come back one more time so that we can see that material list. But for the most part, the committee talked positively about this project as it's come to its fruition.
I have a question though. Did you say, will there be 4-foot ornamental fencing around the parking lot?
Correct, yes.
Like a black ornamental? You don't.
Yeah, if you go, you see where the trees are?
Yep.
Across the front. If you went like just to the back of those trees, there's gonna be some.
And does it wrap
3-foot
around?
high fencing, and that'll go along and just wrap that corner.
Okay.
It'll stop once it wraps the
Okay.
corner. And then there are the brick piers to match the brick of the
Okay.
building.
Any other question?
Yeah, when was Old Brooklyn annexed into near west? You guys gonna consider all the west side near west? Actually, just joking. I know.
Talk about my neighborhood.
Huh? No, when you say near west, I think of, just across the Cuyahoga, so anyway.
West design review.
I believe the CDC is on. They might have sent a comment. Right, Old Brooklyn CDC is on. Do they want to comment?
Yeah, they just raised their hand.
Okay. Connor Brent.
Connor, you want to say anything quickly?
Yes, so I'm the neighborhood development coordinator over at Old Brooklyn CDC. And we just wanted to express our support for the project. We think that it will provide some really good and much needed commercial space over on Memphis in the neighborhood. And we're happy to continue to assist the applicant throughout the rest of the process.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move to approve Memphis Plaza new construction as schematic design approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. And call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Surley,
Yeah.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Sergeant.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll see you
Thank
soon.
you very much. Thank you.
Next item is Euclid Corridor 2023-017, Case Western Reserve University Interdisciplinary Science and Research Building. This is seeking schematic approval. We saw this, as it says at 2049 MLK Drive. We saw this on July 7th. And so two things for the commission. You have in front of you from the motion, it was approved with a couple of conditions. We also have on our agenda that when we saw this on July 7th, we asked that the applicants explore direct exterior connectivity to the cafe space and create a landscaping plan that emphasizes the gateway. So can you address both of those as well when you present, and the design and review comments? I need to swear you all in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Welcome in person.
Thank you. And I also want to mention, we do have a member of our landscape team online who will also help as part of the presentation. Do you need to swear
Yes.
them in also?
I need an I from them and their name.
Hi there, Joe Anderson.
Okay. Anybody else? Is that it?
Adrian,
Okay.
Okay. Thank you and welcome, thank you for having us again. My name is Meredith Case Borden. I'm an architect with HGA. I've got my colleague Peter Cook here as well, and Michael Bruder, for University Architect from Case Western, is also here. And then, as mentioned, Joe Anderson from our landscape architecture team is online and will help with the presentation. So let me see, is this, there we go. Okay, so as the chair noted, we were here in July for a conceptual review of this project. We were back again in August, I believe it was, for the demolition of the building that is on this site, and that was approved. Construction activity has very slowly been getting started. We did receive our building permit recently for all of the enabling work that needs to happen in order to take that building down. So things are moving along. Just a quick review, summary of the building. The Interdisciplinary Science and Engineering Building is a 187,000 gross square foot building that will replace Yost Hall on that site. It will hold about 500 occupants once the building is fully constructed and fit out of faculty and research teams. It is situated between a couple of existing campus buildings on the Case Quad. And the building is really is trying to set an example as very welcoming to the campus by welcoming in both the broader community, the neighborhood, and the city of Cleveland, kind of through that MLK side of the building, as well as very welcoming to the campus community on the quad side of the building. So just to orient briefly, the yellow dashed box in the center there is the site of Yost Hall that we are talking about. Yost Hall sits on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and close to the corner of Euclid. Zooming in a little bit, you can see Yost Hall has to the north is the Tomlinson Hall, which on campus is a building that is a heavily student traffic building because it offers a lot of dining services in the lower level, which is the level that kind of opens up onto MLK Jr. There is a about 20-foot grade drop between the quad level and the street level on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. So that's why you'll see different levels of the building mentioned in the presentation. Ground level is essentially in line with the street there. And then first level is at quad level. To the south of the building is Wickenden, which is another research building. So we are looking to connect into both of those buildings. You'll see a little bit more in the plans coming up. In the survey, the thing I want to point out here, this is the existing survey of the site. What you see between Yost Hall and Tomlinson is a loading dock that serves Tomlinson Hall. And then there's another loading dock between Yost and Wickenden that serves Wickenden. What we are trying to do with the ISCB is consolidate loading function, both from a traffic perspective coming off of MLK Drive and consolidating that function for CASE to offer the opportunity of a better greening up of the MLK Junior Boulevard and Euclid corner of the campus there. A couple of slides of existing photos. So this is the MLK Junior side of the building, of the site. And just of note, especially the lower left image shows an indication of the character of the street along MLK Junior. Just please note that the sidewalk right now exists directly on the curb line, which is not the safest location to be walking along traffic that goes along MLK Junior at higher speeds because it is a larger roadway. And then there are surface parking lots before the buildings. So what, again, a goal for ISCB is really to bring it out much closer to the street and create a much more friendly presence on MLK Junior, really inviting the community into campus. And then just briefly on the other side of the building, on the quad side, some of the character of the other buildings that are there on campus, as well as the lush landscape that exists on that quad today.
All right, on to landscape design. Our primary goal for this building was to create a design solution that places the new building onto the historic quad while providing a seamless access from the King Drive. In managing the challenge of ADA accessibility, along with our slope walks in the gateway, we've also created a series of terrace gardens between the two open spaces that allow for student engagement and activity. We've proposed removing the existing drive and parking lot to create a more park-like environment, which will set the tone for the parkway as future plans evolve. Lastly, enhancing views is an important part of the gateway. This involves physically and visually connecting Martin Luther King Boulevard and the campus. Next slide, please.
So then just real briefly to orient you on the building footprint location, you can see at the bottom of the slide here, we're about 67, 68 feet from the street. Part of that constraint was because there is a buried the Dome Brook culvert kind of snakes through that corner of the site. And so we had that constraint limiting us to how much farther we could come out, as well as the need to traverse accessibly from MLK up to the quad. So we're using that green space to help us there. We're about 47 feet from Wickenden, really just the width of that new consolidated loading dock that we're putting in between ISCB and Wickenden. And then at the narrowest point, we're about 62 feet from Tomlinson Hall, but that widens as you continue to move up that gateway.
Okay, this is the view from Martin Luther King Boulevard looking towards the quad. We've designed a space between the building that creates an opportunity for students to connect and engage with each other. The impacts of the 20-foot drop can be seen here. It's lessened by the way we've approached the design with a series of gentle slopes and places to gather along the way, creating a space that's more than just a pathway from MLK to the quad. Next slide, please. Let's take a look at planting. We're situated back on Martin Luther King Boulevard. We've taken the opportunity to improve the pedestrian experience here by pulling the sidewalk back from the curb. We're proposing an alley of native trees lining the walkway, giving the street more of a boulevard feeling. Along with that, we're proposing flowering trees close to the building with native perennials, grasses, flowering shrubs, and evergreens for winter interest as we move up in grade towards the building, softening the harder edges of the building. Next slide, please. For planting along the gateway's terrace gardens incorporate a mix of native grasses that pedestrians will walk along as they work their way up towards the quad. The gateway keeps larger plantings close to the building faces to ensure the views connecting the campus and the street aren't obstructed. At the end of the walkways, we have small seating alcoves, which will give special treatment with planting that becomes more refined and ornamental. And we punctuate the quad entrance with 2 coffee trees, creating a natural archway into the space. Next slide, please. Here are 2 sections through portions of the gateway. The first shows the gradual change in grade from the street to the lower arrival plaza at the ground level, incorporating some native plantings on that slope. The second cuts through the lower arrival plaza at the ground level and through the proposed seat walls. The space here is nicely suited for breakout sessions and collaboration spaces for the students. Next slide, please. The first section here is through the walkways that gradually slope up to the quad. They are graded to be less than 5% in slope, so handrails won't be necessary. The second section cuts perpendicular to the first and shows the alcoves and their treatments at the end of the walks. Next slide, please. All right, on the quad side of the building, we're proposing native trees around the existing fountain to regreen the quad, as well as perennials, grasses, and evergreens along the quad terrace. We're constrained by the 20-foot fire lane on this side, and we're placing plantings along the terrace where space allows. Next slide, please. First section on this slide shows the elevation change from the quad level at 694 feet to the light well at 681, which is the ground level. We're proposing shade-tolerant vining plants to soften the views from the interior of the building, and lower planting at the quad level to allow light into the building. The second section here is through the terrace and illustrates the trailing evergreens that we're proposing along that terrace. Next slide, please. We're proposing multiple seating options for the space. The 2 fixed bench types, as well as movable cafe tables that will be located at the lower arrival plaza and at the quad level terrace. As well, we're proposing new trash receptacles, bike racks, and accompanying repair stations. We'd also like to implement some charging stations for students' phones and laptops within the space. Next slide, please.
So we've heard about the existing additions. We've talked about the site planning. We've talked now about the landscape. So let's now talk about the building itself, which is what you see here on the screen. We're excited about the direction we're going in right now. And of course, this is a view looking at directly on, centered on the quad. A few things about the overall planning of this. We located the building, you notice that Wickenden, which is on the left of the screen here, is a little bit taller. Tomlinson on the right is a little bit shorter. So we try to echo that massing by placing the larger bulk of the building closer to Wickenden and have it taper down, step down as it's closer to Tomlinson. So we're going to make sure that it really, this is a building that also stands out, but at the same time fits into this campus here. So that was part of the massing strategy. I think another thing we did was as we talked about earlier, mentioned how the spacing between ISEB and Wickenden is about 41 feet or something like that, 47 feet. And what that does is it allows a much more gracious, almost ceremonial approach from the gateway to bring people from MLK up to the gateway, up to the quad, and vice versa. And another thing we did was you can see that the fenestration on Tomlinson has much more of a kind of vertical arrangement. We didn't want to mimic that, but at the same time, we wanted to at least nod to that sort of precedent, having this vertical fenestration. That's what's really informed some of our thinking about the development of the architecture. I think the other thing is, and we'll talk more specifically about this, is materials. We want to make sure this is a modern building, a contemporary building, but again, fits into that campus context. As we were beginning to think about those materials, what we're landing on right now is a masonry product. But we didn't want to just go with a basic brick. So we're looking at something we'll talk about more, something called Aeroscraft, which has a much more elegant, elongated proportion, which we think we're going to do very well. Well, I'll talk more about that. A few key things I'll just point out as we go through here. The main entrance on the quad side is simply dead center. Directly above that on the second floor is a terrace, and above that is, behind that is actually something we call the winter garden. On either side, on the upper levels, are labs, light-up spaces, office spaces. We'll show you plans that will really detail all this. But we think that the first floor is going to be very active. The main entrance, and from left to right, there's going to be an innovation lab, which is where they will be showcasing a lot of the research that's being done in the building. Next to that is a forum, which is where the seminars and lectures and things like that will happen. And again, there's the entryway. And then all to the right, and we'll show perspectives of this, is an academic living room, a vibrant, collaborative space that becomes sort of, I'll say, multi-story, because it'll actually reach down into that ground level, which is where the MLK entry is. So with that said, go to this, which is essentially a detailed version of what you've just seen. What this is showing is the elevation from the quad. And I wanted to point this out just because of a couple of things. One is this will just show you that the floor to floor is about 16 feet. And then also to the far left of this is a physical connection that we're planning between the ISCB and its neighbor to the left, Wigginton. So you can move seamlessly from the building to the. If we go to the next slide, you'll see this is an elevation looking at it from the MLK side. The difference here I want to point out is, as we talked about earlier, there is this 20-foot drop between the quad and MLK Drive. What that allows us to do is to essentially bring in that ground level, which is that gray hashed area down at the bottom here. And again, I want to talk about it more when we get to the plan. But one of the significant changes we did, listening to some of the comments you made before, is we had a smallish entry for dead center here. We also had a smallish entry off to the left. What we thought is, let's, with the landscape plan, bring people up in this universal pathway, up to a singular entry over here. That's what you're seeing on the left. You can always come back and show it in the plan. But that entry is now consolidated, it's brought forward, it's much more visible, it's wider, and it ties into the gateway landscape. And it also brings you up into a cafe. That'll be clearer to see in the overall plans. So it's a 5-story building from MLK, it's a 4-story building from the quad. And so what you're seeing here is a rendered version of exactly that drawing you just showed there. So this is it from MLK Drive. One of the things that I think we were charged with, and I think we're hopefully doing pretty well at, is the case, as we all know, is, if you go down to MLK, kind of has this, turns it back to MLK. One of the charges from the client was to make sure that this building does not do that. So we were trying to present a very open, very welcoming, very friendly space, something that has science on display. And so as you move up that universal pathway, up to that entry, over to that corner, it's now wider and brought forward, ties into the gateway. I think this really begins to celebrate cases appearance on MLK. Working your way back up to the quad, you walk up to up the gateway. Now you're at the corner here, looking at the academic living room at this first floor on the corner. We think this is going to be really exciting space for people who are walking through campus, be able to look deep into the space, see all this activity. You can actually, it may not be quite as apparent in this particular view, but there's a staircase that leads down, and it allows people who are walking by there to actually see down in there, and you can see the academic living room, you can see some artwork that's being planned here, as well as a cafe, which is on the ground level. And again, we'll show that in the plan a little bit later. Now, let's talk about the materials, the exterior materials, that is. Three basic materials that we're utilizing here. As I mentioned, it's masonry.
It's a family of general purpose.
Siri likes you.
That's great, Siri, what's the weather like? Anyway, three basic materials: masonry, metal, glazing. Let's take them where it's at. Masonry here, again, we wanted to utilize a brick or some sort of a masonry, but at the same time didn't want to just default to your basic standard one. What this is Harris Craft, and it's a much longer profile. It goes up to literally 24 inches. They vary. We think it'll give a nice texture and rhythm to the facade of this building. What we're showing here are three. So I know Meredith and so many of my other colleagues are tired of saying this, but I hate to look at materials on a screen under interior lighting. You really need to see exterior materials outdoors. So with that caveat, we are where we are. So let's look at the materials right here. We started out, frankly, looking at this material and looking at a much lighter color to match the renderings that you saw. That's the intent. When we took that material outside and we looked at it, I think we all immediately reached for a sunglass because it was so blindingly bright. We wanted to step back here. So these are the three that we're kind of thinking about right now. From left to right is millstone. The center is charcoal, and the one on the right, I think it's called charcoal brick wash or something to that effect. Based on what we think we're seeing right now, the one on the right, the charcoal brick wash, is a little too dark. So we're kind of right now focusing on the one on the left, millstone, and the one in the center, which is charcoal. The route that we're thinking about right now would more or less match that. We don't want to see this kind of high contrast striping throughout the building. So that's currently where we are. So we're investigating that. We're going to mock it up, to find the right solution. Metal. You're going to see metal in the louvers and elsewhere in the building. And what we're looking at there is having some sort of a mica type of finish, something that's going to give the certain life to the metal, so that as the sun rotates around, you're going to see that the metal will react differently to the different light conditions. So we think that it will be a nice contrast between the metal, between the masonry and this metal. And then the third thing I want to talk about is the glazing. Lots of glass here. And we want to make sure we're doing right by the birds. So we're proposing bird-safe glass. There are at least three different ways to approach it: vertical striping, horizontal striping, and I think, do I go all in and say
dots?
Dots. There you go.
I've been through this.
That's probably the direction we go in.
The non-visible
We
dots.
need to look at that.
Exactly.
So, and that's it. We can go to the next slide, and you can see this is a diagram of the building, four sides of the building. The blue is basically where we're proposing that bird-safe glass. The orange is where we don't believe it's necessary, either because it is low to the ground, it's overhang, or in the bottom right, that's the elevation looking facing Tomlins.
Wicked.
Thank you very much. Wicked, so it's very close. So that's the extent of the vertical basic bricks. Now, let's talk about the plans here. We're going to work our way from the ground level all the way up to the top. Ground level on the left, first level on the right. So let's start at the ground level. We've talked about that access point, that diagonal pathway that leads you up. I mentioned how we, in the prior instances, we had a kind of a small-ish entry in the middle, and we had a smallish entry on the left that was tucked back. We think by consolidating those entrances, making it wider, pulling that entrance forward here, and allowing views from that, we're trying to maximize it to the extent possible, to the gateway. We think that really makes that entry much more exciting and open to MLK. As you move in that entry, a good 75 feet maybe forward here, right at that knuckle in the upper left is the cafe. And that cafe is located more or less equidistant between this MLK entry and the entry on the first floor. So speaking of the first floor, That entry is at the top of the screen here, essentially the middle of that plan. And that staircase, if you were to go in the building, make a right, go down the staircase, that's where the cafeteria is. So more or less, it is equidistant between these two entrances to the building. The layout of the first floor is such that left to right along the top is the living room. You've got the entrance, you've got that forum space, and then you've got the innovation lab at the corner. And all of that's on a terrace that favors the quad. You'll see a pattern on basically all the other floor plans that we have offices on either side here. We have write-up spaces facing MLK as well as the quad on upper levels. And the large areas in the middle are the lab spaces. But right in the center of all this is this winter garden, this space that reaches up four levels, right in the middle of the space. So as we go to the next slide, you can begin to see this is really where the building, you can see the second floor and third floor. Again, you've got offices on the left and right, write-up spaces on the bottom and the top of this. The second floor has that open terrace that looks out on the quad. The third floor is nearly identical. And again, on both of those, right at the center, at the heart of this building, is that winter garden that rises up through the building. And then finally, the last floor is the fourth floor. Here you can begin to see the difference in that massing I talked about at the beginning, where the fourth floor is occupied here, on the right, and not on the left. But again, the winter garden rises up all the way to the top. And then we have some mechanical spaces at the penthouse. So that is where we are. And some questions. Thanks.
I will represent Kim Scott today. She's not able to be here for this particular meeting. The design review committee found a lot of favor in the MLK facing design of the building. That's a really great move by the client to really consider MLK as a front door rather than a back of the building. There was a discussion around studying the southeast side of the corner of the building, particularly the lofted mechanical structure that comes up. And then there was a comment about researching the oak trees along MLK to ensure that the history of those, as you may have mentioned, are understood, because they may be from the Liberty Trees project, which is along sort of the MLK route, North Park, etc. So.
I mean, I think after a prior presentation, we're gonna get a meeting with him and talk about those trees. But we're certainly going to advocate.
And green infrastructure.
Exactly.
As many as possible. So and we've sort of balanced technical challenges in that area, with the history, with the goals, but I think there's quite a few that are remaining. They actually kind of distorted some of the images on the quad side. Some people were asking about the color, so they're kind of ghosted. So if you're not sure, there's a lot of mature trees on the quad side that are being maintained, which I think is really important.
Oh, Madam Chair, I'm gonna talk, I always do. No, actually, what's really cool about this Xerxcraft product, it's actually stone. Pulverized limestone that they put in an autoclave, and the only byproduct from it is water. So I commend you on actually, I think that's the same manufacturer out of Canada. So I commend you for using that product. I think it's a lovely building. It feels transparent. Definitely going to help with what happens along Martin Luther King, because it does feel a little hokey and dull, right? And not engaging. So I really appreciate that. And when is this coming online?
October 26th, 2026, which is the bicentennial.
So I know I have to talk to my son.
So we're not missing that day for anything.
The reason why I'm asking is a selfish question, because my son actually interviewed with Case, grad school with a PhD track in chemical engineering. So I don't know if he knows about this. No, they haven't notified him yet. He's gotten to know. No, but he's been accepted to a lot of prestigious universities around the country, so. But anyway, selfishly, I think my wife would love him to be in Cleveland, so.
Anyone?
I think it's a good project.
Oh, good presentation.
Yeah, good presentation.
We need a motion. This is, schematic approval. I mean, other than coming back for the specific material, I'm just wondering if it's necessary. I mean, really, they've got the material, they're just between two. If everyone else is comfortable, it could come back to design review and staff and doesn't need to come back here unless.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, does someone make that
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the interdisciplinary science and research building at Case Western Reserve University as it has been presented.
Would you, I would say, well, we could do, yes, but could you note that it doesn't need to come back here?
Right.
For final approval? It could go to the director. Then it could go.
For final approval and should receive sign off from the director.
Right.
Second enough?
Second.
Do you get that, Michael, before we call the roll? Basically, I'll repeat what I think I heard, is that we're approving the project, and then it would go back to local and could be signed off on the director, and only has to come back here if you can't agree with the local design review, which doesn't seem like it's gonna happen. Okay, call the roll.
Hampton,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations. When will we see the?
Yost, yes, Yost
Bottle.
will be coming down in May.
Oh, man.
And then it'll start coming out of the ground.
Phil said bye-bye.
Fall.
Okay, congrats.
Thank you all.
Okay. Next item is downtown designer, flats design review, Chap Sung Residence, new construction. This is seeking schematic design approval, permanent parcel number 004264040 on Carter Road. I'm gonna swear you in, and then I think the director would like to make some comments as well. I think, do you wanna go first or after the presentation?
I'll go first.
First, okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay. So we'll have the director go first, and I also think that if folks could look at their sheet in front of them, you have the design reviews comments as well in front of you.
So we have before you today actually a 12-unit subdivision. And 2 of those homes for that subdivision are ready for design review. So this is part of a larger whole, which we will have the presenter talk about in the beginning of his presentation. As we dug into this is along Carter Road, along the riverfront. Some of the commission members who have been around for at least 4 or 5 years may remember that there was quite a lot of discussion around this particular area because of the hillside and its the stability of the hillside. So we did a lot of internal investigation within our department and within the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects. Dan Schenkel is here from City of Cleveland staff who can provide some of that historic background before the applicant begins. You also have before you a file that was prepared by former Director Collier on design guidelines related to this project. And so we believe this project as presented fulfills the design guidelines. There's been a significant amount of work by the city and the applicant for this particular project. Dan, I'll turn it over to you for some comments and some background. If I have anything else to share, I can share it, and then we'll turn it over.
Madam Chair, to the director, I'm gonna have to abstain on one of these homes, but I believe by parliamentary rules, I can still opine on things, right? I can participate in the process. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Madam Chair, members of the commission. Just wanted to provide some background on the project because it is somewhat unique. 3 main reasons that it's before you today is one of which Joyce was alluding to, is it is 2 homes as part of a larger 12-unit subdivision. My understanding is the developer is sort of piecemealing each out over time as they have buyers for the particular lots. You know, the other reason is it does require a variance for a front-loaded garage, so you'll be looking at that today. We're also looking through code to just clarify if there's any other variances needed. It's coming for schematic now, so we'll be back, and so if any other variances are found, we'll present those to you. The other piece that Director Huang also mentioned was these design requirements developed with Director Collier, former Director Collier. So those are before you. You know, as she mentioned, for the most part are met with the design. I think there's some minor things that we're talking through on tweaking just to make sure we comply, but something to consider. We did have a couple slides here just to talk through the history because it is rather unique. Many years ago when Carter Road was originally built, there was a surveying error supposedly that ended up building part of the road on private property. So what you're seeing here is actually once Carter Road was getting rebuilt, MoCap's team worked to rectify that issue. And so essentially some land transfer had to occur with this developer. So what you see in yellow is what the city received from the developer to ensure, you know, sort of making things whole for the city, but also the green showing what the city's property was transferred to the developer. So that does kind of pinch the properties in a way that I think affects some of the design and part of why we're looking at front-loaded garages here in particular. Obviously the topography, the slope, I mean that the challenges of the site itself, I think, are also part of that process. If you go to the next slide, Xavier. These lots were previously subdivided, so that's just some of the history on that. You can see sort of that narrow footprint, but also, you know, even the depth of the parcels are somewhat short based on that hillside. Next slide, please. And then you can just skip to the next, but this is basically showing the 0 lot line that from just the amount of research that we've looked into so far. You could do the next slide, Xavier, that it appears like as part of that process of, you know, the land transfers and things, the 0 lot line was established to allow for greater use of the property, the area that remained, right? And I think the architect has worked well to fit within that sort of smaller footprint. And Lucas, I'm sure you'll be able to talk through, you know, how close to that property line you are now. But with that, that's just sort of the background so that we're aware of some of the intricacies of the project. Obviously, Joyce mentioned the hillside as well. We've talked a lot with some staff. Suzanne DeGennaro in particular has been working with this for many years. And basically her statement was that, you know, obviously when you have an issue with roadway getting built on private property, the city, you know, is working to rectify that. And this developer has worked in good faith for many years to not only coordinate with the city on utility infrastructure, but soil stabilization, site stabilization. And it appears now that they have gone through the process of the engineering requirements to ensure anything that they do on their property isn't going to negatively impact the roadway or any of the utilities.
And I will add that for context, this is at the Columbus Road intersection going down into the Columbus Road Flats. And that yellow stripe that you saw that is now City of Cleveland owned swap is part of the Carter Road Trail Hub, and it's part of the Lake Trail. So if you're familiar with the trails in that area, that is now built. Thank you.
And with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you for the introduction. Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
What is this document that's in front of us?
Oh, this is the design guidelines that former Director Collier established so that when the architect was pursuing their design, that they would use this as a part of that.
So it's marked draft. Has this been like, this was a staff, I want procedurally, this was like a staff thing. This is not design requirements that are codified that we saw.
They are not codified. This is a staff document presented to the applicant as far as we know.
Okay.
You can see there's no date or author.
And it says draft. Okay.
Yeah.
It's for our information.
reference.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
So
Go ahead.
before the,
And I'll make reference to that document as well in the presentation.
before the applicant starts, I saw there was like 103 slides.
Yes, I'm gonna move very quickly.
Yeah, we're not gonna see it. We don't need it.
We'll move very quickly through this. You guys have given a nice history.
Thank
so-
you.
I know, I went through it, I'm like, there's a lot of slides.
Thank you for the introduction. As both of them said, this is many years in making, even before, by the way, my name is Lucas Stive. I'm with AODK Architecture Modern. So even before our firm was brought on, as Dan, the director, had referenced, there has been much coordination between the city and the developer in order to get to the point where we are now. So this is Carter Road. As you know, the director described, if you head north on Columbus, you make the right onto Carter Road, and we are looking at the hillside lots on the right side of the street. We looked at that document already that subdivided the lots into 12 parcels, and when we were brought on board, this was an examination of how you might fit 12 single-family homes onto these 12 parcels. They are tight lots. Dan had described how the uniqueness between Carter Road and the hillside kind of pinches them right up to the front. You have to kind of use them right up to the front of the property line. But we feel like we have, in this sense, shown how 12 nice single-family homes can fit on these parcels with the allotted 3-foot setback on each parcel, allowing for 6 feet in between each home. I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to be focusing on lot 11 and 12 today. Right now, I think just for procedural reasons, this is technically part of lot 12, because we are coming before you two separate things. First off, we're talking about lot 12. This is a schematic review of the home, but we are seeking a final approval of the retention wall system today, similarly on lot 11 as well. This is a version of that draft document you was describing. So when we were brought on as the designer and the architect, the developer said this is a document that's been coordinated with the city for many years, and please work with these design guidelines as you get to know the client and design a home. We've included these renderings by a firm outside of ours. These were also developed with the developer just to show how 12 individually designed homes can be planned for this development. And then this is just a quick reference to the infrastructure that was mentioned previously. There has been a lot of stormwater and water pollution control infrastructure put into place when Carter Road was put down by this developer, and then soils testing and reporting that started back in 2018 and was developed into a report, and which was required to be submitted to the city's Department of Engineering, thoroughly reviewed and finally approved in 2021. So I'm going to just quickly go through the design of this home. Again, we're talking about lot 12 right now. But when the developer came to us before the clients were on board, we obviously wanted to harness views of downtown, and we wanted to make sure that the Link bike path trail was seen as an asset as well, because it's just a fantastic area to be developed. When we design any of our homes, we always look at the sun path diagram, which you're seeing overlaid onto the site, and we just want to be cognizant of how we can always bring sunlight and views into our homes. And this home in particular, or these homes on Carter Road, have a specifically unique challenge. As mentioned, the hillside needs to be stabilized, but also because the hillside kind of comes up behind the home, to the south of the home, and has a lush tree canopy above it, we have to come up with ways to bring that southern light in. So this was one quick schematic section that was cut before there were individual clients saying, what if we put skylights in this home, southern facing skylights with light wells that could bring light down into the lower portions of the house while also harnessing views. So we're looking at the surrounding context being inspired by Cleveland, and this home in particular, as well as the next home we'll talk about, they wanted to really think about the post-industrial context of Carter Road and where their future homes would be situated. So they want to pay homage to Cleveland's history, celebrate its rebirth, and honor hard work. And these are a lot of concept images, both provided by our firm and the clients, and we wanted to kind of use those in the design. We also considered multiculturalism as part of the client's story and how that gets told in the house.
their love of cooking, specifically this style of Korean cooking that they wanted to celebrate. And then this idea of filtered zen, this is really going to be a legacy home for the clients. So thinking about how the home could be designed and situated in a way that when you come home from a busy day of work, you work your way through the home, you decompress, you filter, and you get to your moment of zen. And I will show you how we do that graphically very quickly. The idea of filtering, the idea of a person moving through a filter, shedding those toxins, those contaminants that we all have in our lives, getting to that moment of zen. The idea that two different people have to come together and try to traverse through the house to do this. And then getting to a potential fourth floor to achieve their moment of zen. And these are, again, some images provided by the clients that inspired that. So looking at these type lots, this is approximately the mass that we would be considering, a 30-foot for 34 foot across the front. And at the time we were considering about 25 feet deep because of the constraints of the hillside. And knowing that and knowing the program the clients wanted to achieve, we were assuming we're going to have to stack these structures 4 tall. This particular client wanted the ground to be their garage and entryway, obviously, but they also wanted to kind of flip the typical program and have sleeping on the second floor, so that on the third floor, their living dining area was prioritized, has better views. And then of course, the fourth floor has the killer views for their moment of zen. So this is how it plays out in kind of a form, traversing through the home and filtering. And then we will obviously wanted to harness the views of downtown. So thinking about where the best views are, how we might pop the shell off and create windows in those views, some diagrams of the views that might occur. And then thinking about the home almost like a geode, if you will. It has a hard exterior. When you pop out these areas where views can occur, maybe it has a soft, warmer interior, and that's how the diagram kind of comes together. And here is a rendering of the current design. So this is the lot 12 design, which is known as the Chapman and Sung residence. Behind this home, you can't see it at all in the rendering, and that's on purpose. There is a retention wall that is to stabilize the portion of the hillside that needs to be stabilized for these 2 lots. I'll mention at this point, let me see, actually, because we're there for a second, there's a sneak peek of the other home that we'll be talking about later, but we did want to make sure that we were looking at what these 2 homes would look like together. Here are the floor plans. So ground floor is the double car garage and main entryway.
We don't need to see the floor plan at all. You
Okay,
can go
cool.
right
I'll just
through
go right
the
through
next one.
And we have elevations as well, but I'll keep going through those.
You can go on to the next house.
The developer asked that I include the model home for reference, just to reiterate the fact that these would be 12 separate designs, not a repetitive design. Each client would come to us and have an individual design. So this is the part that we're before you for the final approval for. We're hoping to get final approval of this stabilization wall that you can see running diagonally behind the homes. It is one structure, even though it traverses across the 2 separate parcels. And we have these soil stabilization plans prepared for us by GSI. They're stamped and sealed by the state engineer, and they're ready to be reviewed by Building and Housing. And that's what we'd like to achieve first. We'd like to get a permit for this wall so it can begin construction as soon as possible. And then we would continue our design review of the homes and submit the homes for their building permit after that.
So you're here today for a schematic approval of the one building and the wall, and you'll just be coming back.
Yes, both buildings. So this current thing is the one home. I'll do the second home quickly too. It's technically a separate item on the agenda.
It's this Adamson and Page.
Adamson and Page, yeah.
Okay, so we need to go ahead and act on the first one, but you want to see them all and then come back and do the 2?
I'm gonna make one comment, if you don't mind, Madam Chair. I know what's going on with these projects. It's been it's actually a very intricately sort of connected, inextricably connected geotechnical issue. And that's been going on for about 2 years, I believe. And so you have these homeowners who have actually adjusted their lives because they thought they would be in their homes earlier. So this has been a very long and drawn out, but to everyone's credit, we've gotten to a point, I believe, that everybody's cool. So I just wanted to share that with folks. I don't know if that was going to come up or not, but I think it's critically important that we take that in consideration because these folks have lived through a lot, and they unfortunately didn't sign up for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
So how about this? Just because they're adjacent to each other.
Yep.
If you could very quickly go through the Adamson design, which is DF 2024-04, which will also include the stabilization. We will take two separate motions, but we'll just hear them really quickly together. So please, you can go fairly quickly.
Yeah, these are all repeat slides, so I
Yep.
didn't mean to go through Dan's really quickly, but in a similar sense, we're looking at the post-industrial nature of the site, the city. This is a legacy home. These clients jokingly called it their boneyard because they want to die in this home. They want to live here and for the rest of their lives, and we're very excited about that. We're Geminis, so we're designing for 4, which we thought was a fun aspect. Happy hours, so lots of room for entertainment. And the bridge concept, so paying homage to Columbus Bridge and how a bridge might actually exist within a home, which is a great feature. So that form partie is overlaid over top of each other, and we get a public and a private realm with a bridge in between. And here are renderings of that home on its own. Floor plans, elevations, and the great view from the rooftop. And again, ending with these slides, which is the exact same slides as the last home. This is really what we need to get going as far as final approvals go.
And you had one shot of the two homes together?
Yes,
Can you go
that should
back
be actually my last slide too.
just as we discussed? By the way, the design is really excellent.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So anyone, discussion, comment? You want to move in?
I would like the motion to approve as presented.
Well, let's do first, so just to clarify, first do the Chapman Sung House. We need a separate motion for that. Oh, we do have someone up.
From Tremont West.
Oh, Tremont West, can you go ahead from Tremont West?
Donna Gregonis, Tremont West Development Corporation, Economic Development Director, and Real Estate Development Director for the Neighborhood Development Corporation. 2406 Professor Road is our address, and I swear to tell the truth. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the commission.
Not sure that we
Just
clear
wanna
the
make sure that I
public,
was-
but that's fine too. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure that I was sworn in, right?
Go ahead.
I know we have spent a lot of time working on this on and off. I've been involved with the prior architect, this architecture firm, the developers, in discussing this project for a number of years. The community is in favor of the designs as presented, understanding that the front-loaded garages are not ideal for the area, but realizing the stabilization efforts related to the stabilization of Irishtown Bend, this area, and the walls. That's the big concern of the community and ours as well, because even if something happens, we'll be the ones worrying about it in a couple of years if there is, but it seems like they've fully vetted, the issues here regarding the geotechnical concerns. And additionally, just want to make it clear that the front-loaded garages are something that is definitely out of the ordinary for the neighborhood and out of context, and that looks like it's been worked through pretty consistently and thoughtfully with the neighborhood, and the exception has been made with the city as well, it looks like. The only concerns I have are some of the site plans show that there's a double curb cut or a less than double curb cut, but then the garages are double. It looks like if there's just a way to minimize the curb cuts at all, I would advocate for that, because this is going to be a heavily traversed area here very soon with the park being done in a couple of years. And then the one big concern of the community and the development corporation was we just want to make sure to promote a consistent common spirit of design with these, which would include similar setbacks for all of the 12 units moving forward. And, you know, the 6 feet if possible between the homes. We understand there's, issues sometimes. And then, you know, the hillside stabilization is a big thing as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure. A question, will not be sidewalk here?
We're not sure. There currently is not a sidewalk.
Is there, like, because I saw that in the notes too about pedestrian access.
Chair could speak to that a
Okay.
little bit. The design requirements that are in front of you really specifically detail out the impacts to a sidewalk. So I've asked the applicant to just meet with the Bureau of Sidewalks to confirm how, how they should move forward, because they are moving from private property onto right of way to cut their driveway. And design requirements require like no grade change on that sidewalk. I think we just want to work through the intent of the design of that language, that design language, to ensure that, again, the pedestrian experience is good throughout that
Yeah.
process. And, I think we just have to confirm too with the developer what the thought process was and what's been decided with the city
I think
prior.
there should be more consideration.
To the point that they're building these almost like one-offs, like, does that really make sense? Are you gonna build a sidewalk cut into it at point? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, but you're responsible for your own. So in order to have a whole sidewalk here, you have to start somewhere.
Right, so
Everyone's responsible for their
with
own.
each developed home, you would have to put in a sidewalk.
Well, so that we
leads to
can,
nowhere.
wait, say that again.
Where would it lead to?
Well,
I think that's part of the discussion.
No, no.
Right now, you're only talking 6 feet of sidewalk.
That's what I'm saying. Walk to your neighbor's house and then.
A little critical here
but
about
the idea is like eventually, when you build
I-
a mall, don't you want to be able to walk to
I,
them?
I get it, but
Because you won't be able to.
We don't know when that's gonna happen though. it seems.
Doesn't matter.
And we have to first
That's our
figure out if it's even gonna happen, there is the path on the other side of the
That's
street,
right.
so there
Yeah.
may be a plan.
I
We
think
just
that's
have to
redundant.
coordinate.
How about thinking about it a little bit more? I mean, I think the long term is just that you would hope that people would come here
Absolutely.
by foot, right? So, so I know that it will take time to do that, but I think I
And I do think
think,
that's why you mentioned it's in that design requirements document, and Dan had mentioned it's pretty elaborately
Yeah.
specified, so I think that's a hope for everyone. We just have to
Work
work
on
with
it.
the city
I think
department to
think
figure
about
out if that is part of their
Okay.
plan as far as sidewalks go.
okay.
So to be clear, Madam Chair, by definition of paving the driveways, you're actually almost creating that path anyway. You're talking about a very small snippet of sidewalk between the homes to connect them.
And I think if I could add, what the design requirements are really stipulating is that you have a level surface and these driveways are gonna come in, at a
Right.
different grade. And so if they just installed the driveways without a sidewalk and then came back and had to rebuild that later, you're
It wouldn't
creating a
connect.
poor.
Right, you account for it.
Okay.
And impact.
Grading exercise.
So if you can do it all in one fell swoop, I think it would
Yeah.
help the property owner
Right.
tremendously.
So, I mean, it's schematic, so you can work with that.
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
Absolutely.
So let's just stay focused on the first one, which is DF 204-003, the Chapman Sung residence, which is schematic, including the final approval on the stabilization and retaining wall, so that they can move forward with that.
I motion to approve the Chapman and Sung residence as presented for schematic design and final approval on the wall construction.
Second.
Motion, second was Erica.
To the commission members, did you want to include any of the design review comments or?
Well, yeah.
I think the one comment that came from, or was at least elevated by the CDC with regards to the consolidation of the curb cut. If there's a double driveway, does it need to be a double size curb cut? I think that should be taken into consideration.
Okay. I mean, you're coming back, so you're gonna take these into consideration and the sidewalk and come back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, we realize we're gonna have to come back regarding a bunch of design stuff. Our main priority is get final on that wall,
Yep.
so that can be it.
Okay. So, call the roll?
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Ray Scott,
Yes.
McKnight, Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. So the second one is 2024-004. This is the Adamson Page Residence, new construction. with all the same comments, I do have one just suggestion, it's not a condition, is that when you look at the first home to the Tapman Sung, to the point of the ground floor, since I totally understand why their garage is there, and it makes sense, right, because of the hillside. Something about the canopy over the door, to me, really does create more of a, for me, a kind of a mitigating factor to that. It's like, feels like welcoming
A
and
little bit more approachable.
present. And on this one, you don't have that, and it starkly feels different to me since you have this kind of stark ground floor. So I would consider some contemporary intervention that creates that same thing on the second house. If you agree, it's not a requirement, but I do like the way that the first one actually feels on the ground floor more than the other one feels very much kind of back of the house is the word I would use. So just a suggestion on my part. Anybody else? So once again, this is schematic design approval with the design reviews, comments and considerations, but it's final approval so they can move ahead with the stabilization.
Madam Chair, I motion to approve the Adamson and Page residence for schematic design approval as well as final approval on the wall, with the same caveat that they look at the double wide curb cut, as well as looking at the front door treatment to be similar to the adjacent residence.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Abstain.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
Motion carries. By the way, exceptional design.
Thank you, I
Yeah,
appreciate
so,
it.
we
Appreciate
all
your time
want
today.
to consider like, the moving in.
More lots.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Planning
you.
commission house.
Yes. Good move our meetings. All right, mandatory referrals. We have a couple from we have one from the city. This is authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to issue a permit at 4116 Lorraine to encroach in the public right of way by installing a new entry canopy. And we have Rick.
I want to work in your department because I want to wear a shirt like that every Friday.
We'll welcome you to come and wear a shirt.
I keep forgetting. Next time we come, I'm gonna have one of those. Actually, probably have to go buy one, but.
And Tara, you have two, right?
You should see Christmas time, yeah, all kind of Christmas ones. I apologize, the PowerPoint didn't get it in time, so it didn't get loaded.
That's okay.
But I guarantee you this will be the shortest presentation.
Oh, yes.
Will it be dynamic?
Oh, if it is. Thank you all.
Down the street, building us up.
Wait, new Green Street.
Rick Stock, I manage the Division of Engineering and Construction. For you today, we have ordinance 73, 2024, which is an ordinance that's authorizes director to issue a encroachment permit to 4116 Lorraine Avenue to install, use, and maintain a entry. As you can see on the next page, this restaurant's going to be called Proof Restaurant and Bar. It's currently a closed deli, so the owner is going to rejuvenate it and put in a awning over there. As you can see, the awning is flat awning. It doesn't have that upper portion, and that was done intentionally to show off the masonry work. You can see on the next page that see a bit of a profile. It's about 4 foot wide, about 17 feet wide. And on the following page, you can see the encroachment area is about 100 square feet, 5 by 20. So with that, are there any questions? I can tap dance to make this more dynamic.
I would note that this was reviewed by Landmarks Commission, the design was approved by them.
And we do have consent from Councilman McCormick.
Okay, I think it's a great addition to the neighborhood. I'm waiting for it.
He wants it to happen.
Yes.
Okay. Then is that a motion?
I motion to approve ordinance number 73-2024 as presented.
I second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
Motion carries.
See you Friday.
Great. See you. Thank you, Rick.
Yes, sir.
The next one is public art. This is at 15701 Miles Road. This is lobby artwork, pool artwork, seeking final approval. Tara, we got you.
Yes, I also want to say that we do have, I believe, 2 of the 3 artists have joined online. The 2 for final approval, so I may defer to them on a
Okay.
couple of things.
I'm gonna just swear them in then. Do you all swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury? All artists are
Robin
sworn
and
in.
Evan, are you still here?
See them online.
By the way, the exhibition, I came in early and traversed the second floor.
I gotta go.
It's
Yeah, how dare you.
exceptional.
Oh,
It's so good. It's so, so good.
Robin is.
I have so much to say about it, but not now.
Okay, well, did you all respond already to the chair?
Anyone, any of the artists or anyone speaking on the public art, can you say aye to being sworn in?
Aye.
Yes. Anybody else?
Robin, are you still there?
Robin Robinson? I see her, but
She's having
she's
problems.
off. That's okay. We'll keep going.
So, we're seeking final approval for the 2, interior works. This is at the Frederick Douglass Family Resource and Recreation Center, which the new building of generated the 1.5%, public art program, chapter 186. And these are the artworks. So, again, 15701 Miles Avenue. These were approved by the Public Art Committee on January 25th unanimously. All 3 projects. We're gonna start with the lobby artwork, which the artist Evan Lestore is here. So,
The forward is kind of sticky sometimes.
yeah, see, it's getting way ahead of me here.
Very cool.
I'm gonna let you go back, thank
Sure.
you. So these are the existing conditions in the lobby. The artist Evan Lestore did a fabulous job engaging the community, engaging people that use the recreation center, just talking to them about how they view the recreation center, what the uses are, people that are meaningful to this community that should be included in the artwork. And this is the location, the grid lobby. And these are close-up images of Evan's line work for different portions of the panels.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna turn it over to him to, when I get
They're
to the
amazing.
final. Yeah, so he has a representation of, that's former Mayor Mike White.
Wow.
Former
great
Mayor
was-
Carl Stokes, of course, Frederick Douglass, the center's namesake.
It's when they were young, Robs.
Evan. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you, wait, quick question, just for me, before you go, Evan, can you go back to the where they're going in the building, just before he talks? Cause I just so I see where, so are they basically the panels at the top there?
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and before you go, Evan, how will they be applied? Is this digitally printed onto something?
It's gonna be heat applied vinyl.
Okay.
And when we get to the final slide of showing them up on the wall, I'm gonna turn it over to Evan to explain how the
Okay.
different panels are gonna be applied for easy change out if there were any damage or anything to these.
And there's only 3 of them, basically then, the 3 panels.
Evan, you wanna speak to
Well, go
that?
ahead, I'll stop.
Height-wise, that's correct. Yeah, they're the rows of 3, and then it goes about 72 feet wide.
Wow, that's big.
So this is how it would look on the wall. The mural is about 80 feet wide. It's separated into 37 panels to align with the current wall grid that exists already. Evan, I don't know if you want to add some more here.
No, that's great. Yeah. The one part, the heat applied vinyl, the grid separates everything into these 36-inch by 80-inch or 36-inch tall by 80-inch wide sections, which helps in terms of maintenance down the road, having everything kind of compartmentalized into these small areas. And the background of that we're going to be applying the vinyl to is I mean, the building's brand new basically, so the surface is perfect for vinyl. We don't have any of those kind of texture issues that we've seen in other projects.
And he did work very closely with the Division of Architecture, specifically with the project engineer for this, Mark Dulick and MOCAP, as well as the Recreation Center itself. So that's the first one. I don't know if you all want to wait until the second one to do the full vote. But the next one, the next interior area of the center that's going to have artwork is the pool area, and the artist that was selected, Sankofa Fine Art Plus, and Robin Robinson is here as well. She also did an amazing job of engaging the community. She had a few meetings there where the third artist, Darius Stewart, who you'll see later, they had meetings together at the center, provided snacks for people. She came back, she talked to teachers at JFK, which is adjacent to the property, as well as one of the campus breakthrough schools that's behind the property, distributed flyers, and then she went to the center while people were there and engaged with the parents and children utilizing the pool. So this is the primary wall is going to have the majority of the artwork on it. And then these are other pool pictures. And then on the picture on the left, that there's a secondary wall off to the right there that's also going to have some artwork. And these are the measurements of where the murals will go. These are also going to be heat applied vinyl based on the humidity in the room and having a substrate that will work well with that. That's the secondary wall. It's going to have one mural. I showed you before. It's going to have 4 different images. And then these are the wall dimensions for the different panels. The primary wall is going to have 2 murals that are basically 8 feet by 16 3/4. Another mural is 8 feet by 17 feet, and another one that's 8 feet by 10.5 feet. And then the secondary wall, which is one panel, is going to have one mural that's approximately 8 by 19. And these are what the images will look like on the wall. And she did get parental consent forms from all the parents of the children that will be featured. And she also allowed the parents to select the images. She took a bunch of images, and how she came to these was allowing the parents of the children to select which images they wanted to have up at the pool.
They're awesome too.
Yeah.
Super awesome.
So Robin, did you want to add anything to that?
With all the public art recently.
Powerful.
Okay, I had to unmute. I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention that these images do wrap around the door. So this image on of the mother and son is not isolated from the other ones.
Okay.
So
Yes,
it may not show that in the slides, but it is a wraparound image.
I love them, Robin. By the way, I love the fact that the color, the water, like without them, but this like makes the actually pools seem bigger to have the color. It's so good. So good.
From an emotional standpoint, this really resonates for me, knowing that I was probably one of many African-American kids whose parents were afraid to let us go to the public pool because they thought we would drown. So our relationship with water didn't materialize or manifest itself until I got in high school, where we actually had to learn how to swim.
I did.
Right.
So this is so powerful for me.
Thank you. Yeah, culturally, we weren't really allowed, or we didn't have access to pools growing up. So to have the community's pictures, the kids that actually utilize the pools, pictures on the wall was an important thing.
So I think it's one motion, it looks like, but we're basically, wait, is there one more too, the exterior?
The other one is for conceptual approval.
Okay, so let's do these first because these are final. So we'll need a motion for all the interior artwork, both in the lobby and the pool.
I'm sure I move to approve the 2 artwork pieces that were presented for Frederick Douglass.
Second.
Motion and a second, call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Booker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
McKnight, Stark.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
I don't know if this counts as a conflict, but I'm a longtime fan of Darius Stewart. I own a bunch of his work. I have some in my office at the Cleveland Foundation. Is that a conflict?
So there's another one?
Darius, a big fan, obviously, but maybe I'll abstain just from that.
Which one do you see?
Final
The next
approval
one
of the
that's
last
coming, the one
Last
here.
exterior.
There is on the line.
Okay.
Oh,
I
I'm
did.
sorry.
I
I was
saw him.
confused.
So
This one is
They're all
for
at the same place.
conceptual approval.
this one's conceptual outside.
Yeah, it's actually gonna go on the exterior of the building. These are some pictures that were taken last winter, just around the facility. And then these pictures are showing exactly where the sculpture that he's doing is gonna go, which is facing one of the parking lots. And he calls this piece the Watcher. And I really, if Darius is on the line, would really like him to tell you, because he tells it better than I'm gonna tell you. So Darius, if you're there and you want to just explain this sculpture of the mother figure on the bench. Is he there?
You might be muted. I don't see a Darius on any longer.
Okay, he had to leave. Okay, so he imagined just creating this motherly figure, overseeing kids playing happily. I'm just gonna read this. She's a trusted adult you feel at ease leaving your things with and talking to. Other adults also feel reassured when their kids are around her. Next to her on the bench, there's a pile of backpacks representing how teens can leave their burdens behind and have a carefree time here. It's important for these teens to have a moment to let go of worries and stress. The sculpture symbolizes a safe and comforting space. He said the bench size would be about 24 inches high by 18 inches deep, 10 feet wide. The figure would be about 5 feet 2 inches and about 38 inches from the bench up. And these are some views of the bench as he plans to do it. And this is just showing how the steel rod will connect the sculpture to the concrete poured underground. He's gonna come back with more information. I did want to at least give you information. Oh, it looks like one of the slides is missing. Okay. Just want to give you some information on the materials that he is proposing. Oops. Wasn't supposed to happen. So the materials will be a combination of fiberglass and steel, and he plans to hand paint it with the general color scheme that you guys showed here. And it's going to be very similar as far as substrate to what he had at the Eastman Reading Garden at the Cleveland Public Library downtown a few years ago. So it will be that same concept.
One comment, I would say the bench height, generally speaking, most bench heights are 18 inches high. 24 inches, 2 feet seems a bit high for a bench if other people are gonna sit on it.
Okay.
Like next to the figure. I don't know if that's his intent, like other people will sit next to the figure.
Yeah.
So I would look at that. A common like bench height is 18 inches off the ground.
So maybe that can be a condition or a recommendation.
A recommendation, yeah.
And also, as far as his community engagement, he did participate with some of the meetings with Robin at the center. He's also going to be doing a shoe design competition called Walk in My Shoes, and the winner, and that'll be with the high school students at JFK. And the winner, he's going to help him design the images that are going to go on the backpacks and things that are there with the mother figure. So, and he'll come back with more detail for final approval.
Do a motion for conceptual approval with a sort of study of the.
Yeah, I motion to approve for this conceptual approval that the artist also study the height of the bench if it is the intent for other folks to sit on it.
Okay.
A second.
Commissioner second, call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Jane.
McRae Scott,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
You know what's really funny when you start talking
Motion
about
carries.
kids, and I'm like, I thought the kids were on the ground at first. Let me Which means I'm fatigued. It's like, what is she talking about?
Yeah. You have a director's report? You do.
So the chair did mention that the art exhibit on the second floor opened yesterday. It's excellent.
Mention that.
35 artists from Cleveland. It is well curated.
It's the best curated show we've had at City Hall. I'm going on record to say that.
It is.
It is.
I'm going down, right?
Very.
Please do, and spend some time with it, because it's pretty powerful. So I will mention that I didn't get a chance to put any photos on my report, but please go down to the second floor. The Transformative Arts Fund was launched yesterday as well. This is a $3 million fund. Awards are between $250,000 to $500,000. These are substantial transformative neighborhood projects. So lead artists must be from Cleveland, and they are to apply with an institution also based in the city of Cleveland. And we're really excited about this powerful opportunity to address many of Cleveland's issues with our Cleveland's artists. And we really feel that this will help build capacity as well for our artist community to amplify bigger things.
I rode up the elevator with the mayor this morning, and he said he wants to do more like this exhibit. This month, second.
It should be. It should be. We're a public building.
Out the building, so that's exciting.
The gallery yesterday.
This is especially exciting.
Also, like, I mean, City Hall is an impressive building.
It is.
And the vantage point being up there, you feel the presence of just the architecture.
Yeah, it's really bright, it's bright in City Hall in many ways. Next slide for director support. We're pleading with you to share with us great planners. We're looking for a senior planner in zoning and technology to support the team. Maurice has retired as of January 31st.
Really?
Yep, he has finished his tenure, 35 years.
Holy
So we're looking
smokes.
for someone who loves zoning, who loves administration, who loves GIS.
You guys had a pithy post. What did it say? There was like a sign.
Oh my gosh, released after 35
Yeah,
years.
released after 35 years. I'm like, I know I saw something.
Do you guys have like a posting that we can share?
Yeah, I'll send around the link. Please.
That's a great opportunity.
If you can think of someone, and then we do have a city planner position posted as well next week, so for zoning.
Thank you.
Thank you.